This is no longer the pre-call to order call to order. This is the call to order, and please take your seat. Never mind. Good evening. The hour of 6 p.m. having arrived, I call to order this meeting of the Municipal Services, Facilities, and Infrastructure Committee. This meeting is being broadcast live on the City of Keene YouTube channel and channel 1302. The video is streamed on the city's website and is posted on the website by the end of the next business day, barring any technical difficulties. Copies of the printed agenda are available in the wall pockets as you enter the meeting room. The public will be recognized to ask questions and make comments on the agenda item under discussion. After being recognized, all remarks are to be made through the chair. Will not recognize an individual a second time until everyone who wishes to speak has had a chance. Anyone who does wish to speak and address the committee is asked to go to one of the microphones in the room, identify yourself by name and address prior to speaking. Our minute taker is participating remotely, so committee members, remember to turn your microphones on, and if the minute taker cannot hear, she will ask you to do so. So this being said, I call to order this meeting. I notice that all 5 of us are here, and we do have a quorum. Good news. We have a kind of lengthy agenda this evening, and I might add that the agenda was even longer, so I elected to split it. So other items will be on September 3rd that you might have been expecting to see at this meeting. They are not forgotten. A number of the items on this agenda have had a bit of discussion with staff. And I would say that staff and council and Vice Chair Filio and myself heard a lot of comments from public. And I will move the microphone closer. And I think you'll be pretty pleased at some of the results of what we're going to be bringing to you. And that may cut short some of the comments that we heard, I guess, prior to this evening. First item on the agenda is regarding the access road driveway to the wastewater treatment plant in Swansea. Staff heard the concerns, we heard the concerns, and I think, I do want to acknowledge comments from Steve Hooper, Katarina and Peter Rooney, Susan Ebert, and Carl Jensch. So, that being said, bring the good news.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Don Lucier, Public Works Director. Before we get into the presentation tonight, I want to start by taking responsibility for what can, charitably be described as a piss-poor rollout of this initiative. I will say that, as Aaron's going to describe here in a minute, our intention with this was really focused on user safety, pedestrian safety, and the safety of the folks that use the area. That said, I could have done a lot better job rolling it out, communicating to the public why we were closing it, what brought us to this point. So with that said, I'd like to turn it over to Assistant Public Works Director Aaron Costa. He is the gentleman who manages our utilities, and he's going to explain kind of how we got to this point.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you. I'm Aaron Costa. I'm the Assistant Public Works Director, and I oversee all things water and sewer related for the City of Keene. And I'm also the Wastewater Treatment Plant Manager. And just for reference, I've worked at the wastewater treatment plant for nearly 25 years. And I know some folks are confused and upset about the decision to close the road to recreational activities during normal business hours. And I understand that it's a beautiful location, and I've walked and jogged on that road myself many times after work. So I understand. I support the various types of activities, birding, walking, and jogging. But recreation of all types had become a problem, creating unsafe driving conditions for those who need to access the wastewater treatment plant. And this also creates an unsafe condition for recreational users themselves. And tonight I'd like to share with you some of the factors that went into this decision-making process, which seems sudden, but it's something we've been thinking about for a long time. So the wastewater plant was constructed in the early 80s and came online in 1985. And the wastewater plant access road and the wastewater treatment plant are located on city-owned airport property that is actually located in the town of Swansea. And the sewer fund pays rent to the airport for the wastewater plant, and this includes the access road. So this is the road that we're talking about. This is actually Airport Road off of Route 32. And this highlighted line is actually the wastewater treatment plant access road. The access road is not a public road. It's a private city-owned driveway. There are no homes or businesses on the road, and its main function is to provide access to the wastewater plant. And it's not a city-designated park or recreational area. And I know that there are picnic tables out there, and I would like to explain why that was. A few years ago, the airport decided to open some of the property to the public and created this nice spot up here by the terminal parking lot where there's a few parking spaces with picnic tables, and folks can hang out there and watch the planes fly in and out. And around that same time, they also put 2 picnic tables on the access road, one roughly here and the other down here. And I understand that may have sent the wrong message. I think it was a lack of communication between different departments with different objectives. However, the policy that was presented would have allowed those picnic tables to stay. And some may remember that the access road, the entrance to the access road used to be gated. So there used to be a gate right here. And after the last person left for the day, that would be closed. And after the last person left on the weekends, which is usually around 10 a.m., that would be closed for the weekend too. And in 2018, the Public Works Department reevaluated the need for that gate, and it was removed. We did not anticipate that by removing the gate, it would inadvertently invite more recreation, and the access road no longer had the appearance of a restricted area. So you combine that with the picnic tables that went in around that same time, and we can start to understand why the area has become increasingly popular for recreation over the years. Lastly, regarding the gate, the Public Works Department always reserved the right to reinstall the gate if need be. Reinstalling the gate was not part of my initial recommendation. However, the sewer fund, as you could tell from this picture, recently spent around $300,000 to resurface the access road for the first time since it was constructed. And some folks have been doing burnouts on it and tearing up the new pavement. In addition, there have been folks doing donuts in the fields outside the fenced-in area of the wastewater plant. And if these types of activities continue, that gate may need to be reinstalled. Another contributing factor to the popularity of the area is the internet and social media. Just Google birding at the Keene Airport, and it comes up popular spot. And there are some organizations that provide guided outings on the property, which I wasn't aware of. I've seen the folks down there, but I wasn't aware that they were providing guided outings. And the city has policies and protocols regarding the use of city-owned property, and organizations are required to obtain a license to conduct activities on city property. Maybe they have a license, maybe they don't, I'm not sure, I'm not aware of it. But I would support them having a license during non-business hours for those activities. And what I'm really trying to establish is that there's a lot of recreational activity happening on the access road. Other contributing factors that have changed the amount of vehicle traffic on the road over time. Regulations have changed since the plant went online. And this happened around 15 years ago, and it really had to do with what was going on with septage. And some septage haulers had and managed privately owned septage lagoons on their property. And about 15 years ago, that practice was no longer acceptable, and all septic waste must be discharged at the treatment facility, which is not only good for environmental reasons, but also as a revenue source for the sewer fund. The wastewater treatment plant is a business, and staff have worked over the years to optimize our septage receiving policies in order to generate as much revenue as we can. So you can see in 2006, before those changes happened, we took about 2 million gallons in waste, generated around $141,000 in revenue. In 2010, after that, our business tripled. All of these gallons are trucked in by septage trucks. There's no pipe. They're all trucked in. And in 2021, we had our biggest year ever, over 7 million gallons received, and we generated over $500,000 in revenue. But typically, we're around that 6 million gallon per year range. So who uses the access road for business? The septage haulers do, and here's an example of some septage trucks. And obviously, this was for demonstrational purposes only, but you can see, because they're both facing the same direction, obviously one would be passing the other in the opposite direction. But basically what you see is there's very little room in between their two mirrors and almost no room on the side of the pavement. And these trucks are freighted with liquid and they're heavy-duty pieces of equipment. This is an example of our sludge hauler. Now, he's only in and out of here a few times a week, but there's 60,000 pounds of material in that trailer. It doesn't include the weight of the trailer or the truck itself. This is an example of a chemical tanker. This tanker was never on site before 2004 because we weren't using this chemical in the process. But again, our processes change over time. And then we have an RV discharge station that we maintain at the facility, which is right here behind these two signs. So this is an example of one of our RVs that was pulling up to use the facility. These are big rigs, and they vary in size from the big ones that you actually drive to smaller tow behinds. And I have staff, too, that use the road regularly. They're responsible for maintaining 27 different utility outstations. The lab is responsible for collecting samples. There's a lot of activity on the access road during the day. And then I wanted to clear up why the hours of operation and why we recommended that closure time. So there may be a little confusion about the 6 a.m. to 4 p.m. because the sign outside the facility says 7 to 3. Well, the sign is old and outdated, and we've been running a 6 a.m. shift at the wastewater plant for about 20 years. So staff, haulers, and RVs and other traffic begin on the road starting at 6. As part of a bigger picture, one of the things that I would like everyone to understand is that the wastewater plant and the sewer system operates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So when we say close at 3, that doesn't mean we're locking the gate and we won't be back until the next day. Because the plant and supporting systems operate 24/7, 365, staff may have to respond at any time of the day. Could be 3 o'clock in the morning. So the road at any time may have traffic on it and must remain passable. So it's often that staff doesn't leave the facility right at 3 p.m. A hauler or RV may be still dumping. And the 60 minutes between 3 p.m. and 4 p.m. allowed for the closure of the facility and a transition from business to recreation. The plant is also staffed on the weekends and holidays. So I have somebody there every day of the year. So the unlucky person that gets to spend Christmas morning there is having a great time. But anyway, the point is that we're there 365 days a year, and we're also open for septic receiving and RVs Saturdays, Sundays, and all city holidays from 7 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. The decision was made to allow unrestricted access for recreation on weekends and holidays, but those 2.5 hours in the morning, there may be some truck and RV traffic. We're cognizant that the traffic is minimal on weekends, and we were trying to be as accommodating to recreation as possible and not be unnecessarily restrictive. So what we've done over the years to try to educate the folks about activities on the road is we've posted signs. The one on the right says, "Notice active road, truck, and vehicle traffic. Pedestrians, please move to the side." We've had leash your dog signs out there before, and those disappeared, so we put new ones up. It's hard to tell from this picture, but we're looking at the wastewater plant, and there's a notice, "Do not enter" sign here. There's a notice, "Do not enter" sign here, and there's one on this other side. Because we get people coming into the facility, it's an industrial facility, there's industrial activities going on, and we get people coming in and turning around our septic receiving facility, bikers and joggers, not everyone, just some folks. And recently, this year, we had 2 construction projects occurring on the access road and put those large digital signs out there stating, "Road closed," but some people just went right by it. So in effect, generally speaking, the signs haven't been effective. So I've heard concerns from staff and haulers that drive the road about the pedestrian and recreational activity. Not to mention, I observe this when I drive it as well. And overall, this puts me in a tough spot. Am I supposed to just ignore the concerns? I have a responsibility and I feel an obligation to report these activities to my supervisors and make a recommendation. And if an accident were to happen and someone got hurt or worse, it would just be a terrible thing. And I'm guessing, if there were to be an accident, the road would probably be closed anyway. I believe this was a proactive, common sense approach intended to prevent an accident. It also was a compromise. And what it does is it provides safe and unobstructed driving conditions for those who drive the access road for business purposes. It also provides safer conditions for those using the area for recreation. There's 52 weeks in a year times 2 days, Saturday and Sunday. That gives you 104 days of unrestricted access. Plus, we hadn't even talked about, there's 11 city holidays that fall into the weekend category. So that would be opened unrestricted as well. And we have Labor Day coming up. So that would have been 3 unrestricted days in a row where you can grab your binoculars and your running shoes and have at it. That's 115 days a year with no restrictions and 250 days a year after 4 p.m. And it was a zero-cost solution. Sure, you could build sidewalks, you could build a bike lane, you could build whatever you want out there. But how are you going to enforce that people stay on those sidewalks and off the road? And who's going to pay for the installation and maintenance of the infrastructure? The sewer fund has a lot of higher priority expenditures. And I think we can all agree that the city is a great place to live and offers many miles of walkable sidewalks, hiking and biking trails, and beautiful parks to visit. So in conclusion, I know this decision to close the area during normal business hours has ruffled a few feathers. I'm sorry, I couldn't resist. But I hope everyone understands the history and the rationale used in this decision-making process, and that this was an opportunity beginning in 2025 to establish an access road use policy that can accommodate both business and recreational activities, but just not at the same time. Because the area isn't going to get any less popular and the wastewater treatment plant isn't going to go anywhere. Lastly, I would like to thank all the folks that have abided by the new policy, even though you may be unhappy or disagree with it. Driving on the road since the new policy went into effect has been a night and day difference, and your cooperation was most appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you.
So that's how we got here, Mr. Chair. That said, and obviously, Aaron feels very strongly about this, as I do too. But we've also heard the concerns from the community, and I know that you all have heard a lot of concerns as well. So, against Aaron's recommendations, we will be reopening the roadway on an interim basis. And what I would like to suggest tonight is we open it back up with appropriate signage that reminds people of the rules for a 2 to 3 month period, and then reevaluate whether or not we can safely accommodate recreational use during the business hours. My hope is that some of the folks in the room here tonight that care about this facility will help us remind the other users to keep your dog on the leash, to walk on the shoulder, to be mindful of the big trucks and not stop your car in the middle of the roadway. All of those things that we've raised tonight. But in 2 or 3 months, we will report back and we'll give you a recommendation as to whether or not it's going to be possible to keep it open for the public or not.
Thank you. First off, I want to thank you, Don, for your opening comment, acknowledging the situation. And Aaron, extremely well presented, very serious. And, I understand how we got here, your rationale, and very, very well presented. And hopefully all those present heard it and understand it and will carry the message. This is your chance. If the community that uses that driveway does not abide by safe rules, stay to the side of the road, it should be closed, because nobody wants someone to get hurt or cause an accident or whatnot. But Aaron, I just want to thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
You're not just being dissed in this.
Thank you.
Committee comments? Laura?
Don, I also want to say thank you for that opening comment. I really appreciated that too, and I hear the concern. And just to kind of follow up, I wonder if you could, for those of us who don't drive large vehicles, why is it different than just a car moving to the side of the road in terms of, I guess, the ability to maneuver and slow down? I'm just kind of...
Yeah, the biggest difference is the width of the vehicles. The photos that Aaron showed, those vehicles are legal highway width, which basically means 8'6" from outside to outside. Your typical personal vehicle is between 6 and 6.5 feet wide. So these things are 2 feet wide, 25% wider than your average vehicle. And that's the biggest difference. Now you get two of them passing each other. With their mirrors, they're probably a little over 10 feet wide on a roadway that's 22 foot wide. So that's the difference, is that they can't just pull over to the side and or drive around people.
Right, basically it's going to be a lot more difficult to maneuver around pedestrians, so...
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Anybody? So to the public that's here, you've heard and what the future status will be. If you still wish to address the committee, it's a public meeting. But basically we heard what all the letters said and probably what you would say. But up to you. If anyone feels the need to say more, let me know. Thank you. And to the city manager, so this will just be administratively done and handled?
Yeah, since this is not a city road or a public road, it is an administrative decision to open or close it. And you heard tonight the reasons why we got here and the plan to come back and report to you in a few months to let you know how it's going.
Personally, I think a little more signage wouldn't hurt, but yes.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you for the presentation, and Dawn, thank you for opening up and taking responsibility. This says a lot about you. In opening this, the thing that struck me the most was I understand that you have the authority and it's administrative and you can close it at any time. As a counselor, I didn't like finding out that way myself.
Great.
So I can only imagine how the community felt. Moving forward, I'd be curious to know if, can we shut it down? It sounds like regular personal vehicles are using this road now too.
Yes.
Not for business use, for the facility. Is there a way, the chair said, to include no use of personal vehicles, that your only use should be going to the facility and use of the facility.
I do know that some of the birding community do like to drive up and down the road in search of particular species, I suppose, or to be able to get photos. What we are going to put on the sign is that if you stop your vehicle, it can't be on the roadway. That's been a problem for the haulers, where somebody will see a really great species of tufted tutu or something, and they'll just stop right in the middle of the roadway, and a 60,000-pound vehicle is coming up behind them.
Yeah.
So what we're saying is, if you're driving on the vehicle, if you're going to stop, you need to move off of the pavement.
I understand that. I was even suggesting going a step further and saying no personal vehicles.
Yeah.
Only because, you painted a very clear picture. There's been increased use by the city and the community as far as pedestrians. And I just think that might be less vehicles on the road would certainly help with that. So I'm hopeful that the community will, hold each other accountable and not let the bad actors and bad apples ruin it for everyone else. So thank you.
Okay. Yes, sir. Microphone. Yeah.
John Bates, City of Keene residents on Colorado Street. I know many of you, I worked as a municipal employee for 25 years for the city. So I know how things work, and I'd like to know, was there a study on vehicle traffic? How many vehicles travel the road daily? So what's our daily average, weekly average? And pedestrian traffic, kind of get numbers, right? We can hypothetically, I know, is it Aaron? Sorry, I don't really
Yes,
know yet. So
that's
Aaron's, to me, is not in favor of keeping it open. Don made a great decision to keep it open. I appreciate that. The paving was awesome. So as a person who enjoys going with my wife and family to look at different wildlife, it's not just birds. We see deer, we've seen bear, bobcat, all kinds of different animals down there that you can't see it anywhere else in Keene. It's a huge resource for people, not only for able-bodied people, but for people with disabilities. We have a lot of people that drive because they can't walk, and they can park and enjoy such a beautiful sight. They can enjoy the airport. They can enjoy all the stuff that Keene offers. So it's not just a while, and I understand things, the concern, but also the trucks go really fast. I don't know what speed they're going. It's not posted because it's a public, right? It's a private road, so it's not posted 25, 30. I've driven large vehicles, so I know, you either got to slow down, there's air horns, there's other ways to get pedestrians to move if they're a problem. But I'd like to know, before to make a decision in 3 months to shut something down, that there's some type of study done. I mean, we do studies all the time in the city. You sit on the corner, how many pedestrians cross Main Street? Or how many bikers? Let's put a bike lane in, right? We've done all those studies. I think what people don't realize is such a great resource for Keene is that area is. There's so much wildlife, and it's year-round. There's people that go down there every day, a lot during the day. There's other people maybe go down there for 5 minutes, but they take that in. It's a mental health thing that just release yourself to enjoy nature. It's, again, you see species. The Sentinel publishes tons of pictures that people take down there, right? All the time. My wife's had pictures in the paper because you don't see that stuff. It's migrating birds, it's other things, and people can enjoy that as a city that you can't go anywhere else in Keene, right? Yes, there's many places to walk, but again, there's people that can't walk. There's people that have to drive to these spaces. So I think if we're gonna think of even shutting it down, that there's some type of traffic study, You sit there and how many trucks a day go through there? It's not that busy. I've been down there a lot over many years, and it's really not. It's gotten a lot more praise or a lot more attention. COVID, people were out, so that brought more people to that area, and we noticed a huge. But that geographical landscape is changing a lot too. The water's changing. It's just evolving. So I think as a resource, it's huge for the community to be able to enjoy it. The thing with people doing things they shouldn't be doing, the burnouts and things, unfortunately, it's enforced by Swansea Police Department. So if you put a no trespass, Swansea's not gonna go down there and respond. We see cruisers down there, but they're just having a presence, and that's what they should do. But it's not really enforceable by, right, Keene PD will not respond there. It's not their jurisdiction. They can't enforce that rule. So that's just my point, is to think about the people that can't walk and the people that need that to just enjoy the outdoors. So, thank you.
Thank you. Again, staff got the message, so I'd rather not be repeating the same thing. Steve, you were up first, and then you, Jacob.
Which?
Him.
Oh, okay.
Are there two Steves?
Not the more famous Steve.
Okay.
Steve Lindsay,
You can raise that.
Franklin Street. I'm a citizen. I got a question or two. I'm a little concerned we're losing public spaces to recreate in. We've lost Island Park in Hinsdale. That's shut off now. We've lost some of the rail trail in West Swansea because of the washouts. Now this. So I'm a little concerned about losing these recreational places. So Sunday, I had the day off. I went down to another place, which seems to have had great success with access road that's used for recreational, thank you, trails. I went to Turner's Falls and walked it with my friend and her dog on a leash, and I was wondering if our city has studied what others have done, in this case Turner's Falls, much more distressed city than ours with drug issues and other issues, yet they have a success rate. We saw about 30 people along a road that's twice as long as this one, and maybe we could study their success. Have we studied what others are doing? For example, they have a few cutouts here and there where people in their cars can stop and watch the birds. and there are some other things where it gets you off the road, and there seems to be a respect between the patrons using, it's called Cabot Forest, and the people, the truckers who are supplying First Light, the Canadian company that owns it, and the Silvio Conte Fish Research Laboratory that's down at the end. My suggestion is if we could visit some of these other places that have been doing it much longer than us, and maybe, like we say, improved signage and other things too. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Steve. Yes, sir. You.
Thank you, Chairman. This is Ken Bergman. I'm Ken Bergman from Blackberry Lane in Keene. And I was, for 37 years, a biology professor at Keene State. I taught vertebrate zoology and ornithology, as Mr. Costa well knows. And I believe our public officials here are sincere and competent and very earnest and well-intentioned in what they're doing. And I have a daughter who's a federal attorney, so I know best not to question the legality of issues that I know nothing about. But what I wanted to do was just to say a few things to highlight the uniqueness of this location. And I am one of the photographers who's been published in the Sentinel. And the Sentinel reporter contacted me first because she'd seen my pictures. And I first started working there with students using trail cams along the river, all the way from the waste treatment outlet on the river all the way up to North Keene. And the wildlife we saw and documented with our trail cams is just remarkable. Some of it leaks out onto the road, and some of it even enters the vicinity of the runways. And as a member of the Conservation Commission, I have worked as a liaison with Airport Director Hickley and helped provide and read and proof and offered letters to the State Department of Transportation and FAA regarding the placement of the wildlife control fence, which was initially planned for the berm or dike that fragments the wetland there. And he felt that he should have the fence much closer to the runways. He drove me around the perimeter of the runways. We scouted locations, and his application for funding for that fence includes a strong recommendation from him, McFarland Johnson, the consultant, and from the Conservation Commissions of Keene and Swansea, that it be placed as close to the runways as possible and as far away from the airport road because of the way it would obstruct viewing and study of nature in those locations. It is unique habitat. It's not just the best place in Keene. There's almost nothing else like it in southwest New Hampshire, which is why it attracts so many birders from out of city. It is like on a dike. You probably couldn't build the road today given current wetlands regulations. But it provides access as if you were at one of the western or southern wildlife refuges where you can drive and use your car as a hide or a screening to not scare away the birds. And we have outstanding photographers, at least one of which is severely handicapped and can't walk that distance. So over 200 species of birds have been documented there, many of them rare and very difficult to see anywhere else. There are good shoulders to pull out on, and I've always tried to make sure I'm off the road and on the shoulder, and I hope Aaron has never seen me elsewhere than that. But, you know, where you can sit there patiently with your camera, with your long lens, and take pictures. And it's also a very educational place for people to come and see and understand what kind of resources we have in this city. So legally, it may well be a private driveway, and probably as a policy, there's every right to regulate it and regulate traffic, but I just ask you to take into the balance the unique values, not just for recreation, but for education, for learning, for scientific study of what we have here, because you won't find anything else quite like it in this whole southwestern area of New Hampshire. Thank you.
Thank you. So again, take the win and be happy. And please pass the word, stay to the side, you know, follow safety protocols and so forth.
And I want to just say thank you for everyone who's made comments. I agree with you. But as someone who has the business to run at the wastewater plant, I was just asking for that compromise, and I thought it was a really good proposal to close it during business hours, leaving all of those other hours open for recreation. So I agree with everybody. It's a great spot.
Good, thank you. Okay, last, Stephen, Mr. Hooper.
I'll avoid my 45-minute. Steve Hooper, 5 Colby Street. Simply want to say thank you to the city for giving another chance for this situation. I think the most important thing now that we've got an extension is for everyone to try to publicly educate the importance of safety. When I was a city councilor, safety was my utmost concern. Everyone in the city, everyone who uses that road, needs to realize the importance of safety for the septic truck drivers, for the pedestrians, for the private vehicles. So I asked everyone to educate about the importance of this. This is what we need to do now. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you all. Motion, perhaps, or comment?
I just had a quick question, and then I will have a motion after for either the city manager or the public works director. The communication around this, I see the Sentinel is here tonight, and my guess is that a lot of folks that are really interested in this are following this closely anyway, but is there going to be an additional kind of press release, social media? Okay.
Good thought.
Thank you. All right, I have to get my agenda. Are we ready for? Okay.
Please.
I move to recommend that the staff report on recreational access to the wastewater treatment plant driveway in Swansea and the public communications related to concerns with restricted public access to the airport road be accepted as information.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Anything further from the public, from committee? All in favor? Unanimous. Good. Thank you. And thank you to the public for communicating. Otherwise, we wouldn't know, and that would be bad. Thank you. Next item, item 2, downtown west side parking garage study assessment, findings, recommendation, and report summary from city engineer, city who? Who we got?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Don Lucier, Public Works Director. I am filling the role of the city engineer this evening as he was called away to a parent-teacher conference. Hopefully, it was just a first night of school and not, his kid getting into trouble already. But in any event, with me tonight is Alyssa Peck from Weston Sampson. And she's going to introduce her team, but Weston Sampson was selected as our consultant, our engineering consultant, to lead this study. They've completed their work evaluating the feasibility of a parking structure for the west side of downtown. And I'm going to turn it over to Alyssa to present their findings.
Thank you.
Have fun.
Thank you, Don.
Thank you to the committee for our opportunity to present our findings for this downtown parking structure project. I know you have a pretty busy agenda, so I won't bother going through ours. We'll just sort of work through things as we go along. To introduce myself, I'm Alyssa Peck. I'm with Weston and Sampson. Sitting next to me is Doug Osler, also with Weston and Sampson, and then Jim Zullo will be replacing me in a few moments sitting here, and he's with THA. So our project scope and goals. So at a super high level, we just wanted to understand the existing parking today, whether or not a structure is needed now or potentially in the future. And how did we get there? So we had to review the existing parking inventory within the study area, both public and private, and understand how are those spaces being occupied. And we achieved that by doing drone data collection over a 3-day period, a Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, last October or November. And we collected the data every hour to understand how those spaces were being occupied throughout the day. And once we understand that, we look into understanding whether the parking is adequate today to accommodate future growth. And all of this we'll get into as we go through the presentation, but we come up with the size a future garage may, the growth in the city by using typical growth factors as well as future development to understand what size of a structure might be needed. We have prepared some concept designs for that structure and a preliminary financial analysis for that structure. The study area is identified in yellow, but generally Mechanic Street to the north, and then to the south, Emerald Street, and then focused around the Central Square area and the Gilboa Ave area. And I will turn it over to Doug now to speak on the existing inventory, and then I will trade places with Jim. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, my name's Doug. I have 7 slides for you today. I was tasked with mostly going over the parking counts, kind of gathering the data, and coming up with some of the conclusions about existing, and then making some projections for future parking needs. So this slide shows just a summary of the types of parking that is in our downtown study area. Color-coded some of them. We did get into more detail, but in suffice, we have focusing on public parking, we have 372 on-street parking spaces. The vast majority of those are metered or paid, with a few that are loading zones, as well as a few free parking spaces. There are also 254 public parking spaces on off-street parking lots, as well as a number of parking spaces that are privately owned, whether they're available for the public for use by those private entities, such as shopping centers or what have you, or they could be reserved or by permit only. Getting into some of the results, the next 4 are heat maps, just kind of showing some snapshots of a few particular hours. This one and the next one will be for 1 p.m. This one is showing the weekday, the next one will be Saturday. I'll use the word moderate amount of parking that we saw around noon, around the lunch hour, 1 p.m. during the weekday. There's a general moderate amount of parking utilized throughout the study area, both the north side as well as the south, both the east and west. There was quite a bit used on Winter Street and Court Street and Washington Street of the on-street parking. As we get to Saturday, we'll notice that it is not nearly as utilized on the north side. We've taken a number of offices, particularly might have either closed or I'll leave it at that. And then we have Main Street. I'll get in the next slide, excuse me. Main Street is much more heavily utilized on Saturday than on the midday during any weekday. We do see some moderate amounts of public parking in the public lots, still particularly south of Court Street. Now on weekday at 6 p.m., as we're showing here, it was Friday in the evening that we had the highest amount of parking that we counted. But you see on-street parking is nearly full everywhere where we counted, and particular moderate use of off-street public parking south of Court Street. And I won't mention that north is to the right side. I had it enlarged so that you could see it a little bit better, although it is a fairly decent-sized study area. And then the last slide for Saturday, again, not as utilized in the north, but still very busy along Main Street, and then some moderate use on the public parking lots. So in the future, we would estimate continued use of the existing parking would remain relatively the same, but then we add on some growth projections, and that can vary between what could be expected and what might actually happen in the future. But for our projections, we do look at some census data, which the Keene population stayed roughly the same in the last 2 census periods. We also looked at traffic in the downtown area. traffic volumes on Main Street itself did increase by a considerable percentage over a number of years, the last traffic counts that were collected for that. We also looked at some currently vacant spots that could be filled in the future, as well as 2 potential sites. We're not saying that it would happen, but as part of the projections, there could be some increased intensity for retail if the city aims to have some increased and residential use there, if there's a desire for expanded downtown intensity for healthy growth in that area. So we considered those as part of our future projections, as well as what I'm labeling as a cushion here. You don't want absolutely every single space filled. You want to have at least some for people to come in as people come out as well. Have a little bit of cushion. We use 10% for that. And so in summary, our existing parking that we counted, can't see it from here, from this angle, but 523 was the max amount of vehicles that we counted parked within specifically the publicly available parking spaces, with 103 to spare. In the future, based on the projections that were used, we would expect up to 850 parking spaces to be needed. That includes the cushion that we have. So the future projection of the parking area that we have, if we have only 554 parking spaces available in the future, and we have an unmet demand that we would want to supply for, with the possibility of a potential public parking garage in the downtown area, a concept that would let us have a total of 915 parking spaces would be able to meet our projected parking needs. So in addition, we also identify a couple, I'll just bring out a couple points. If you wish to evaluate any wayfinding, I do notice a number of parking signs to direct areas to where public parking is, could be revised for increased clarity, or if there's intended to have some more live areas for people arriving there. There was a number of illegal parking that was noticed. Maybe we did notice there weren't too many loading areas that might be more convenient for ride sharing or hailing type of activity where people are being dropped off as opposed to parking and staying for a while. Could be considered, but you guys have a beautiful downtown. Walking through it, it is lovely. I want to make sure you maintain that downtown plaza appeal. And with this, I'll pass this off to Jim.
Well, thank you. My name's Jim Zulo. I'm the president of my name's Jim Zulo, president of THA Consulting. Our role in this was to help evaluate different sites for a parking structure, identify what we thought was the best, and then do some functional designs, and then ultimately some facade renderings to tell you what it might look like. And then lastly, do a financial analysis. What does a garage cost to not only build, operate, but maintain, and how much revenue that might require. And just to stress on Doug's issue, the need for a parking structure really is highly dependent on new development here. A lot of the sites that we looked at are on the Gilbo lot, Gilbo Avenue, and you see kind of a sea of surface parking there. So really, the need for a garage is really kind of part of the vision of how you see what's not the highest and best use of land a block away from your, beautiful down street, being developed in the future. Because without development, the likelihood is your existing parking resources are adequate. But development is really what would drive a new facility. So we looked at, per the request of the city, looked at 3 sites. The site to the number 1 is the Gilbo East. Initially, the discussion was about what was Gilbo Lot West, which is just across the street from that. But really, functionally, that was just too small of a facility. The property that the city owned there was not adequate to really support a garage without taking a good chunk of the public right-of-way. And then site number 2 was the commercial street lot there. And then Site 3, where we pivoted to, was a privately held lot, very large, very appropriate for parking, but not just parking. Potentially, a lot of other type of development could occur there. So when we look at parking, we're really, parking functionality is really about how can you build the most efficient parking facility, meaning, because parking is expensive, and I'll get into that. Structured parking is expensive, so a key to evaluating sites is how efficient can it be, meaning how many square feet per space. A good efficient garage is, say, 320 square feet per space. If you get more and more than that, it gets more expensive, and it's not recommended. So these sites, as you can see, not only were we looking initially at what parking you could get, but other types of development, because again, we don't want to, typically just design a parking facility. So these just refer in the blue, based on Site 3, what other significant options were available. That said, the town doesn't control that site, so we pivoted to our preferred option. The Gilbo Lot East is a very difficult site. It would require a lot of height to achieve the parking that would be needed as per the study, and it is less efficient because of an awkward size. And basically, because it is a small site, every space, every park space would have to be on a ramp there. Unlike your City Hall garage, where you have a flat area to park on, this would all be ramped. So, in conclusion, we determined that the commercial off-site was the best site. And this gives you a layout. I'll quickly go over the advantages of this site. It's a very efficient footprint. Parking at this facility would only be about 35% on a ramp. The rest of it would be flat. The one advantage to the flat side, which we would face on Gilbo Street, as you'll see in the rendering, it's a much better aesthetic enhancement than looking at ramps. You can do a lot more with the facade to make it more attractive and to better fit into your downtown. It's more user-friendly, this type of garage. There's multiple opportunities for access and egress. There is opportunity for other types of uses at the grade level, which I'll talk about. And it really, you have through this efficient design, you have about a net gain of 300 spaces, which per Doug's evaluation would meet your future need. And again, the future need's a projection. It's not an exact science. And it really doesn't have any negative impact to adjacent properties, as you'll see. Like the Gilbo site, you had another adjacent lot that would have an easement come through the Gilbo East lot. So this is the footprint of the garage. And to achieve the amount of parking we talked about, you'd have grade plus 4 supported levels for a total of about 477 spaces. Net gain of about 360 spaces based on the loss of the surface parking there. The one thing that we were cognizant when looking at when we planned this is understanding the Cheshire Rail Trail there, understanding the farmer's market on Gilbo, and even thinking about this first bay that you're seeing in yellow could be used as either not parking, it could be converted into retail or community space, and I'll show some pictures of that, or it could be used temporarily to expand your, like on Saturdays, your farmer's market into there. You could not allow parking and use it as a covered area to expand the market if that was desirable. Also on the lower right, you'll see kind of a pinkish colored area that we had thought would be like a bike storage facility. With your proximity to the rail trail, it might be nice. We've designed facilities that accommodate bike storage and or bike rental facilities, and that might be a nice option here. So it's not just about the parking, it's thinking about what other uses can be mixed in. And again, this is just some example. We design very regularly garages that have grade level retail or community uses. On the grade level, here you're seeing pictures of that. And then the picture on the left kind of communicates, maybe an expansion of the farmer's market into the unfinished parking area, so you wouldn't have to add that. We wanted to look at, architecture here in Keene, and, we did that, and kind of you'll see our renderings to be kind of sensitive. And again, this is very conceptual. So this is the facility as you're looking up from Gilbo Ave, kind of looking towards your west, I want to say. But The one thing I want to point out, obviously you have the brick motif, you'll see in other renderings, kind of the grade level activated, a nice walking pedestrian area. But if you'll notice too, the big important thing about design of a parking facility is safety and user comfort. So you'll see the significant amount of glass in the stair elevator towers. You want to make sure people feel comfortable, people can see in, people can look out, and that's a key consideration on where those stairwells go. You know, obviously, we wanted to locate them closest to Main Street, and this facility is well located to serve the theater, the Main Street businesses, and potentially new development on Gilboa Street and some of the other sites that were a part of the recommendation. So here's the access egress off of Gilboa. There's another one in the back of the facility. You kind of get a sense of the scale of the project. This facility is about 47 feet high to the top of the parapet wall. The elevator towers and stairs go a little higher than that, but that gives you a kind of a sense of the scale of the building. This is looking kind of from the transit center, looking down the trail, and gives you a sense of, you know, again, the size and the street level activity. This is kind of a closer look where, again, you're seeing kind of these areas within the garage, and that could be, you know, it could be parking, it could be another use, it could be a community center, it could be an expansion of your farmer's market there on Saturdays. And again, we wanted to use brick, try to have color. And again, this is conceptual. There's a lot of other things that could be done, but we kind of just took it upon us to put this design together. This is, you know, looking at the facility from across the street, and we did have other options that tried to kind of break up the length of the structure, which we do have later in the presentation. This is looking from the theater, just to give you a sense of, you know, how that would look. Obviously, brick kind of wrapping around. Again, the other thing that can be done to kind of break up some of the structure is not only, you know, we put a mural here to kind of enliven the grade level, which would have been otherwise just concrete, but you can also have kind of scrims or artwork or things like that through the full length of the garage to kind of add a little more vibrancy. And again, this is just another view looking near the old skateboard park. And there you see a secondary entrance there with the orange car going in and out as well. So in sum, it's a very, you know, efficient garage. Obviously, it's sized to accommodate that future need. And now let's just kind of talk about kind of the preliminary financial analysis, because it's very important. A lot of towns, and I'm not saying this case here, but a lot of people say, oh, we need a parking structure, but until they see the economics of it, they don't know how that works. And in most towns, if not all, a parking garage, especially in Keene, is not going to stand on its own 2 feet financially. It has to be what we call system financing. So all the parking that Doug talked about that is in your streets and your public lots that you charge for, that revenue is what has to go to help support a new facility, because the facility itself would require, I'm going to say, somewhere around $250 to $300 per space per month to be financially viable, to cover debt service, to cover operating expenses, and to capital reserves. So in a lot of towns, that's not viable. There's just not people paying that amount of money to make it worth it. So it's got to become a system finance, and I'll go into that. So based on our the conceptual plan here, we did a order of magnitude cost estimate, assuming that it would be, publicly financed, with the bond rate, terms 30-year, cost of issuance of a bond, about 3% of the total value. And the one thing that we did here, and we're still having kind of discussions with your finance people and the parking director, is we assumed one of the drivers for this garage may be the development of the other lot across the way, the Gilboa lot east, into housing or something like that, more beneficial than just a surface parking lot. And we estimated, and we did a drawing, probably about 80 units. So we thought that, the sale of that property would generate some revenue to offset the cost of the garage. I haven't talked to realtors in Keene, but we estimated that based on the number of units on there, you might be able to get $2 million. We talked about staff. So that was a reduction of the project cost. So here you kind of see a summary of the total cost of the garage, the annual debt service. We included a debt service reserve fund into the sizing of the bond, which often is required by public finance entities. And so that's that. So as I talked about the system financing, we have to say, okay, how can you adjust your overall rates to help generate revenue to support a facility of this, giving, substantially, it's $1.3 million of debt service every year. It's $500,000 plus in operating costs. And what we started to do was look at rate increases over the next 10 years to see how close you might get. So you'll see, I won't go into a ton of detail, but that's what's presented here. We raised your on-street rates, your permit rates, and your violation rates. And we did this also consulting other towns in the area, looking at their rates and that type of thing. So it wasn't totally done in a vacuum. Again, there's additional operating costs associated with garage, utilities, insurance, manpower, that type of thing. And then importantly, we also provided a capital reserve fund. So every year you should put away a certain amount. We projected about $125 per space per year, which equates to about $60,000 a year, because in 7, 8, 9 years, you're going to start having joints fail and waterproofing and things like that. So this is and I obviously will not go into this, but the long story short here is when you take the revenue that we've projected over time, not only increases to your existing rates, but also some of the additional demand that Doug spoke of, and the rates are the rate increases are highlighted in yellow here. You get a total projected revenue amount, and then we add in the expenses. Now, the one thing I just want to note, in your parking fund budget, there is a contribution by the city to pay for capital, things like that. It's not all made out of parking revenues. But we just wanted to show just what parking revenues would generate without any other sort of city contribution. And in summary, you'll see in red, there is a operating deficit in the first 10 years, which equates to about a little over $3.5 million. And when you net present value that, that's about $3.2 million thereabouts. So in summary, it would require a subsidy by the city to support this garage, even with the rates we projected and that type of thing. Could we get more aggressive with rates? Potentially, but these rates basically more than double, would double your existing rates in 10 or 11 years out. If you look at that pro forma, they're every 3 years. Not overly, I don't think overly aggressive. I think your rate today is $1 per hour, just talking about your on-street. 10, 11 years out, it would be $2.25. But again, that's not adequate to support this without some subsidy from the city. And we looked at grants that might, offset the costs, and there might be, some minor grants related to EV charging and things like that. But without the inclusion of a multimodal facility, be it a bus or something like that, or some significant economic benefit, grants for new parking structures are pretty hard to identify and locate and win. So you're kind of, again, this parking structure would probably only make sense depending on what your future development in the area would have. And in those cases too, it becomes a bit of a catalyst. By absorbing some of the parking into like this facility, it would open up other, surface lots in the area for future development. So with that, this is just a summary. There is adequate parking in the downtown now, and but in future growth may really kind of start stressing that a little bit, as we talked about, and certainly future development, depending on its intensity, may require a new facility, and that new facility would likely require, additional contribution from the city, would not stand on its own 2 feet financially. So,
Thank you. Very excellent presentation, very detailed. I would like to, if possible, get this large enough so I can see it.
yeah,
That'll help. Okay, and for the benefit of the press, just to make it very clear, by no means, and I'll speak for the committee and just take a risk, proposing that this is going to happen anytime soon.
yeah.
I
If
just
I could
want-
add,
I
we
don't want to
didn't
see the
project.
headline saying council takes on another $20 million, $50 million project.
No, to your point, we didn't even start projecting the financial analysis until 3 years out, that this garage would not be, there's no reason for it to be built, certainly within the next 3 years. That could be 4 years, that could be 5 years, if ever.
Okay, without the information, we cannot proceed
Sure.
and make good decisions, so I thank you for that. But again, just to make it real clear. Committee, yep.
I have a couple of questions. I would love maybe a medium-sized one. I don't know, but I do appreciate this, and I'll certainly spend some time going through and looking at what these actual numbers are. I have a question for staff, and then I have kind of a broad comment. The question for staff, and I had asked a question in during the budget hearing around trying to like wrap my head around the parking fund and how is the parking fund sustained in those pieces. I don't know, I don't see Chelsea here. Can you speak to that a little bit in terms of what actually goes into the parking fund? Because we talk about it as self-sustaining a lot, so.
Yeah, so the parking fund is sustained by the revenues generated by parking. So primarily, it is, your parking permits, your on-street parking, and all of those fees. It is also receiving a contribution from the city in the way of an administrative cost. So there are some administrative costs that are paid by the general fund. So it's separate from the parking fund, and that's calculated each year. That's based on staff time and other work that's done by the general fund to support the parking fund. But primarily, it is a self-sustaining fund. It also, it does contribute to the downtown. There's been a lot of work in the downtown area in terms of beautification, and that is supported also partly by the parking fund.
Thank you, and then if I could just make a brief comment. And it's a comprehensive presentation, and I think that it was the right decision by the council to move forward on this study and kind of take stock of where we are and what we might need, and this will be an important resource in the future, I think, as we continue to kind of grapple with what's possible on Gilbo Ave specifically, and what would we like to see as a council and as a community. I do think it is, broadly that I will be interested to see kind of how the parking demand does or doesn't increase based on how some of our institutions in the city are performing and what they're doing. And one of the things that comes to mind as a specific example is that right now, Keene State College has been able to absorb its increased parking demand over the past couple of years with the temporary Blake lot. If that is actually going to be temporary, then at some point there's going to be some demand for something closer to long-term permitted parking. I also think that as we continue to kind of see hopefully increased development downtown, but also increased development based on some of the restrictions that we've recently modernized around building height, around first floor residential spaces behind tenantable commercial space in some of these mixed-use zones that are either Gilbo Ave or are abutting or adjacent to Gilbo Ave. I think the picture might change within the next few years in terms of the growth that we need. I will also throw out there that I'm not crazy about kind of moving aggressively on increasing parking rates or necessarily parking violation fines downtown. One of the things that has struck me since I got on council is that we certainly do have a lot of free parking holidays where I think quite a bit of parking revenue is left on the table. So, something to maybe think about in the future, but not right now.
Yep, Counselor.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I know it's been going on for a while, so, it finally come to fruition where you can at least present it to us. But my fellow Councilor Greenwald and I, as we both sat here, as we close in on, both of us in the city council, we've both been here for 3 decades now. We've both seen can't even count how many parking garage presentations we've had in the 30 years Mitch and I have both been here. And especially with today's economic climate and the downtown project about to happen, because it has to happen, the chances of this garage going through are somewhere between 0 and nowhere in hell. So I appreciate the presentation.
Don't be discouraged.
There is
that's what we're here
absolutely
for,
no chance of the council approving this garage. Maybe a decade down the road, we come back and look again. But as we know, in today's economic climate and what we're going to have to do downtown, there is 0 chance of this happening. So I don't even want my constituents to think there's a snowball's chance in hell this is going to happen, because it's not. But once again, thank you for the presentation.
Yes, city manager.
Well, and I guess since we're making ourselves very clear, we're not recommending you move forward with a parking garage at this time, because the demand does not say that we need one. I do think, though, the city moves very slowly, and we plan projects methodically over long periods of time so that we can hopefully set aside funds in the future for when we do need it. And we continue to monitor the trends as we loosen up parking restrictions for housing projects, and we see different areas of the city continue to grow. So I do think it was a very worthwhile effort and something that we'll build on, but we are also not recommending a parking garage at this time.
Thank you. Anyone else want to pile on? Okay, while he's walking, quick.
I thank you. It was a great presentation. I was glad you touched upon the I was thinking of it as vacancy rates, but I think you called it a cushion. So I appreciated that. I'm not sure how much you explored like timetables as part of this study, whether that was included, when we collect revenue versus when people are actually parking. I don't know if that was touched upon at all, but I know that you said Saturday evenings or Friday evenings were very busy. Saturdays were very busy on Main Street. But just curious if you had touched upon that. And
Thank you.
You have just the time of day that you did your counts?
Yeah, we have data for many hours of the day. For this presentation, this is what we wanted to show. As far as revenue by hour, I did not specifically look at that.
I think we got enough detail.
Yeah.
Just the construction cost scared me. Your Honor.
Mr. Chairman, just because the consultants are here to ask, were there to be some public-private partnership relative to an infill project in the downtown area, in that general vicinity along Gilboa Avenue? Some vision and expertise on your part. Is it the most logical to use lower levels for the parking and development up above, were it to be residential, or in the opposite direction? I'm asking this in terms of safety and any kind of emissions concerns, and how fan control and things best worked in order to allow for that kind of public-private partnership on a site like this.
Yeah, there's a couple ways, parking can be developed with, say, residential development. One is a wrap, so you have kind of the garage and then residential wraps around it or whatever uses. Two, and that's probably the most common and most affordable, because the other option is an overbuild, where you have a podium of 2 or 3 levels of parking and then building over it. And the challenge with that is that the structure of the building above oftentimes has to come down through the garage. So instead of being an efficient parking space of, say, 320 per space, 320 square feet, that can go up to 375, 380, 400 per space. And basically, it's a cost per square foot. But both options that you mentioned are utilized all the time. You know, the podium just tends to be a higher, because you'll have how many of the layers of parking and then a building above. So, and the one thing about a wrap is when we looked at the larger site, I think adjacent to Commercial Ave, you're kind of hiding the facility as well, so, I mean, I like parking garages, but a lot of people don't, so, that's the benefit of doing a wrap, that you're not saying. And in both scenarios, though, they do come with additional venting or HVAC requirements, because, an open parking garage has to have a certain amount of air that gets through it. If that does not have it, then you have to put in mechanical ventilation.
Gotcha. Okay. Anything else? No. Thank you for the presentation again.
All right, thank you.
I think we're ready for a motion. I move to recommend the downtown west side parking garage study assessment findings and recommendations and report summary to be accepted as informational.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Anything from the public, from the committee? Seeing none, all in favor? Thank you. Okay, we have a somewhat two-part item going on, and with the committee's indulgence. First, recognizing item 4 relating to no parking zones, ordinance O-2025-27, and then as part of the discussion, dropping back to recognize Mr. Shapiro's comments. So, Mr. Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Don Lucier, Public Works Director. So item number 4 on the agenda is the ordinance that would put into effect the, in the control booth, you can turn that off. We're not using the presentation right now. Sorry about that. So it would put into effect the request for no parking on Church Street that was requested by Mr. Shapiro. So you may recall, we talked about this, it seems like 3 months ago now, but I guess it was only 2 months ago. We did talk about this with the committee, and as a result of that conversation, you asked the manager to get together with the neighborhood and meet with the school and come up with, a compromise solution that everybody could live with. So we did have that meeting back in the middle of July. We also, I took a little walking tour with Brian and looked at, sort of troubleshooting the situation. And if we were to authorize a no parking zone as requested, where would this cause additional problems and issues in the community? So in the ordinance, we're recommending actually 2 separate no parking or parking restrictions. The north side of Church Street between South Lincoln and Probate, which was the original request. We're also recommending the northern end of Valley Street be identified as a no parking during that same time period. We do think that there's a pretty high likelihood that as people back up, they're going to want to back up down Valley Street rather than continuing down Church Street. We did look at it's not Hardy Court. Because there's no real way to turn around on Hardy Court and it's a narrow road, it's dead end, I think it's less likely that people would loiter there, while they're waiting to pick up their kids. That said, I'm always surprised by human behavior, so I will caveat this with saying that we may be back at some point with follow-on requests as a result of these changes. So that said, I do believe that the petitioner is going to be speaking tonight and has a suggested amendment that he would like to talk to you about, but I'd be happy to take your questions.
Just one short one. Do we differentiate between parking and standing?
I'm sure that the PD has a legal definition. Maybe the city attorney knows that. I don't know. I think the difference is whether you're in the vehicle or not. I believe, but I'd have to double check that. In other words, standing is you're parked in the vehicle idling,
Yeah.
versus you park the vehicle, get out, and lock it behind you.
Yeah. Okay, well, some research for later.
But our ordinance is written as parking, standing, stopping, it's all inclusive.
Okay, Counselor.
Thank you. One of the reasons that we put this on more time and wanted to have the conversations as opposed to just, doing something with the no parking initially was to avoid the kind of spillover effect into other streets. One of the ones that comes to mind for me, because like I mentioned last time we talked about this, I have had to negotiate parking on it for the craft fair every year, is Wilbur. And I would almost be, based on the dimensions and geometry of that road, I would almost be more concerned about cars backing up along there around the curve up. Was that part of the walkabout?
I'm glad you mentioned that. I should have brought it up, but that Wilbur Street came up during our conversation last time. It also came up during the conversation meeting with the neighborhood. Wilbur Street is already in the city code as a no parking zone. So in the code from South Lincoln, 176 feet in, which is essentially the Wilbur Street frontage of the school, that distance, there's no parking during school hours, 8 to 4, on the north side. Now, the south side of that curb line is really all opening for their parking lot. So there's really, I don't think there's really much opportunity for people to park there. From 176 feet to 311 feet around the corner, basically, it is blanket prohibition on both sides of the road where the curve is. So that's already a no parking zone, and it's already signed as a no parking zone. I did ask my staff to add some additional signage to make it clearer. I did notice that one of the neighbors had put up kind of a homemade no parking sign, but it was within what was already designated as a no parking sign, so a no parking zone. So we're going to put up some additional signs so everybody understands that whole length, that 135 feet or whatever it is no parking. But that doesn't require any ordinance changes.
Thank you.
I see the answer to my question about standing right in the ordinance. No person shall stop, stand, or park. So I guess my request would be more about signage. But
Yes.
again, work on it.
Yeah.
Okay. Committee, anything? Mr. Shapiro, you're up. Good evening.
Good evening. Joe Shapiro, 288 Church Street. First of all, I would just like to thank the members of the committee for the first meeting where many people got to express their point of view, people from the school, people from various parts of the community. We really try to make this not a single issue, but like a place where people could come and talk about the various pressures that having a community's school that's no longer really a community school because kids don't generally walk to the school anymore, the pressure that it's caused on the community. So I really appreciate everyone's effort and all the people who came to talk about the various issues. One of the things that I know, and I discovered again, is that sometimes it's not a perfect solution, and there are consequences from any solution that we have to try to consider. And actually, when we had the community meeting, Mr. Lucier didn't mention this, but there was an idea that got brought up, which I had certainly never thought of, which is to turn one of the empty lots down Church Street into a parking lot for the teachers at the school, which would free up the area further east. And I know that that is a bigger project. It involves probably the school doing it. It involves money, et cetera, et cetera. So we're not here to address that now, but I just want to express my appreciation for all the effort that went into this. In terms of an amendment to my initial request in the letter, today was the first day of school. There was a big crowd, but I think even more people stopped to bring their kids in on the first day. But one of the things that we realized is that The school recommends dropping kids off starting at 7:30 in the morning. And our initial request was to have signs say, no parking on school days 8 to 4. So I would like to request that that be amended to probably to 7:30. And I think that, I checked this out right before we came here tonight. I think there have been, just in the last few days, some initial signs put on Wilbur Street across from the school, which also say no parking on school days. I didn't really pay close attention, but my wife said it said 8 to 4 on those too. So I hate to, replace new signs with newer signs, but you might want to think about that as well.
Okay. Any questions for
Not for him, no.
Mr. Shapiro? Oh, thank you.
General comment.
Yep.
I don't have a question for you, Joe. I just have a comment in general. I drove through the neighborhood 3 or 4 times today at various hours because I knew school was back. And I guess as the old quote goes, says, Houston, we have a problem. The cars were absolutely everywhere. They were partially in people's driveways. I watched people turn around and do a U-turn where a couple of wheels went up in somebody's front yard. What I saw, not from everybody, but I saw from several motorists is the total disrespect for the east side neighborhoods that they're parking in. Now, this ordinance isn't going to fix everything at all. As we mentioned a couple months ago when it first came to MSFI, we've got to take pieces at a time. Because obviously, when you fix a problem, it might create another smaller problem. But we do have a problem, and one of the biggest problems is, for whatever reason, as I watched today, like I said, I went through multiple times and sat and watched, was the disrespect some of these drivers had for the neighborhood that they were in, whether it was parking, idling, not even off the road, halfway in the street. There in one case, like I said, they actually turned around, the wheels went up in somebody's yard. So this ordinance is not going to fix everything, but it's a start. But once again, as Mr. Shapiro had mentioned, and other neighbors from the neighborhood mentioned a couple of months ago when it came to MSFI, there's a problem. And it goes beyond just the parking. It goes up to disrespect. And one step at a time. I have no problem with changing the ordinance a half an hour earlier, but this is just the beginning of fixing a problem. So I want to thank Mr. Shapiro and the neighbors for speaking up, because there is a problem here. Thank you, Joe.
Can I make one comment? I hope it wasn't you who was parked in my driveway.
No.
No, there wasn't anybody parked.
It wasn't me.
Two things. One is, I think, I don't know that this committee has any say-so about this, but obviously, if signs are put up, it would be good if they were enforced. I don't think they'd have to be enforced very much for people to follow the signs. But I think, as Councilor Filio has said, people have gotten used to kind of just doing anything there. So I think it would be good if the police made the rounds on a few occasions after the signs are put in. And the second thing I wanted to ask is, because I didn't see the ordinance, so when you're talking about Valley Street, which wasn't in our original request, is that the north part of Valley Street on both sides of the street or on one side of the street?
Mr. Chair, if I may answer that, as it's written, it's Valley Street east side, meaning the northbound side of the roadway. So in my mind, I see people heading north on Valley Street and getting into a line and then taking a right onto Church Street to continue as they go. And that was the intention of it.
So it will be the same parking restrictions on the east side of Valley Street?
Yes.
Yes, okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone from the public? Yes. Good evening.
Nicole Demarest, 288 Church Street. Just a quick follow-up on what you were just talking about for Valley Street. How far down are you putting those signs?
Through the chair, right now as it's written, it's from Church Street to Kingsbury, so the first cross street.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Anybody? Okay, Vicki.
The sidewalk is on...
Vicki Morton.
Oh, Vicki Morton, 275 Water Street, sorry.
Thank you.
The sidewalk is on the east side of Valley Street. So if people park on, if the no parking is on the east side and people park on the west side, they're going to have to cross Valley Street, climb the snowbanks to get onto the sidewalk to walk up to the school.
So, again, Mr. Chair, the intention of it, and maybe it was half-baked, but the intention of it was to encourage the people that are queuing up to pick up their children to continue queuing up further west on Church Street. So they would continue past Valley Street towards Carpenter and beyond. You know, just, if I was trying to pick up my kid, I wouldn't want to be facing south and then having to bang a U-E and come back onto Church Street. So my thought was that most of the people that are going to be using Valley Street would be trying to line up, heading north, and then taking that right onto Church Street to go towards the school.
Okay,
Okay, I got it.
thank you.
Yep.
Yes, Counselor.
Thank you, Chair. Ed Haas, 114 Jordan. Question for the city engineer. I'm sorry.
He's not here tonight.
DPW, City Director, or Mr. Shapiro. Was there any differentiation between picking up and dropping off conditions? Because it's my sense that picking up involves more cars waiting for longer periods than dropping off. Appreciate your thoughts.
I can take a stab at that. I do believe, you know, we kind of heard that when we met with the school, that parents tend to get there a little bit earlier in the afternoon in order to you know, be first in line to pick up Johnny than they do in the morning, which again is, you know, talking about like where are they going to line up as they're waiting. That was kind of the thought with the Church Street and the prohibition on the northbound side of Valley.
Okay. So to move this along, Chair moves and proposes an amendment changing the pickup, the start time from 8 to 7:30 on both Valley and Church Street.
Second.
So amendment is on the floor. Any comments? All in favor?
Mr. Chair?
What?
I'm not sure if I'm allowed to make a comment if there's a motion on the floor.
It's on the amendment, but.
There was a question about whether or not that change would also be made on Wilbur Street. Right now, it's not written in here, but elsewhere in this ordinance, Wilbur Street from South Lincoln to 176 feet east of South Lincoln is prohibited from 8 to 4.
We can't do it on this. We can't do it on this.
I don't see anywhere in this ordinance anything about Wilbur Street.
That couldn't be included as an A?
No.
As part of an A?
No.
I don't think so.
It's part of the same section of the ordinance.
The committee could propose a change that would create an A version. And if you
Well,
have.
my amendment is making an A, so is this going to make
You
an
could,
addition?
you could vote on your amendment now.
Withdraw
You
it.
could do another amendment. You could withdraw it. You could vote
Okay,
on this
good.
amendment and make a B, but.
I withdraw my amendment.
Second withdrawn.
Okay, so now, go ahead, you take a shot at the,
Okay, I'll move to make an amendment to the motion. That'll include, as written in the ordinance, Church Street from South Lincoln Street and Valley Street from Kingsbury. I'm going to change it from 8 a.m. to 7:30 a.m. And also that'll include changing Wilbur Street from 8 a.m. to 7:30 a.m. You have a second?
Second.
motion's made and seconded. Is that, as? you
That
like?
work?
Comments on the amendment? Public? No. Yes.
I don't know that this is necessary, but just so it's clear, on Wilbur Street, which is not where I live, but very close to where I live, on one side, there's no parking at all, which is the school side. On the other side are these signs saying no parking on school days 8 to 4. So maybe the ordinance should be explicit about saying which side of the street you're talking about.
So, Mr. Chair, what I understood the amendment to create an A version to be specifically referring to section 94-93B, which is the specific time regulations. Wilbur Street is listed in paragraph A and paragraph B, but I understood you were amending paragraph B.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good, yes. Yep, good, everybody?
Moving the amendment.
Okay, moving the amendment, which is seconded, all in favor?
Okay.
Unanimous. Now, discussion of the ordinance 0-2025-27A, which is amendment. Anyone, comments, public? Seeing none.
Okay. First thing I'll do is I'll move that we accept Mr. Chaparro's comments as informational.
Second.
Need a second. Okay. Yeah, anything on that? All in favor of the ordinance?
Okay. Move we recommend adoption of ordinance 2025-27A.
Second.
Anything from the public, from the committee? Seeing none, all in favor? Unanimous. Good, thank you. Thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda. This is a request for extension, a deadline for the start of construction, Brookfield Lane. Again, Public Works Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Don Lucier, Public Works Director. This is a request to extend a layout. The City Council approved a layout for a road to be known as Brookfield Lane. It was nearly 2 years ago now. Construction hasn't started, but the City Council did include a requirement, a condition of that approval, that construction begin within a 24-month period of the date of approval. So in order for that layout to remain valid and usable, the council would have to approve an extension of that specific condition. The request has not been made to extend the completion date, so presumably the construction contractor, the owner, would have to start and complete construction of the public infrastructure within 36 months, which would be next fall, next September. I will say Mr. Tim Sampson, the author of the letter and a partner of the developer, property owner, is here this evening, and he can answer any questions you might have.
Would you like to come forward? Or where are you? Oh, there you are. If you have any comments, introduce yourself, please.
So Tim Sampson, Sampson Architects. I did write that letter. One clarification from Don. I'm actually not partners with Michael Pappas. He asked me to file for the extension. So I think there's a little bit of background with this. This property had been previously attempted to be developed by Norm Henry years ago. I've actually been involved with this ever since Norm was trying to build some houses up there. And I think during that transition, when Norm passed, Mike Pappas bought it. I think that's sort of slowed down the process. In talking to Mike, I believe SVE is finishing their end of the engineering, and I think once that's completed, I imagine it needs to be resubmitted to you guys for sort of final approval, and I think he's ready to start construction probably in the spring.
No change in any of the plans or conditions? It's just an extension of
Not
time?
that I've been made aware of, no.
Okay. Committee questions? Public questions, comments? Yeah. what? Okay, good.
Your turn for the motion.
Okay, how about a motion?
Down here.
Jacob?
Nope, I'm over here.
You? Oh, you.
Your turn.
Okay.
He's still here.
All right.
Move to recommend the City Council grant WMR Development Company an extension to the construction deadline stipulated in condition number 5 of the resolution R 2023-29C to provide an additional 12-month period from the date of council action, subject to all other terms and conditions stipulated in the resolution.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Anything from the committee, public? Seeing none, all in favor? Thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Okay, and now what I sort of considered might be the main event of the evening. Discussion of the downtown project.
Let's go home.
What? First, before you speak, just a question. How many downtown merchants are present this evening? Any downtown building owners besides myself? Okay, just for the record, because I did spend some time going around spreading the word that there was going to be a discussion of downtown, and when they say they didn't know, they can watch it on television. Okay, so to the Public Works Director's credit and the City Manager's credit, there has been a lot of conversation about the downtown project. I know Council Filio and myself have spent a good deal of time talking with staff about some issues, which Mr. Lucier is going to go over, and some solutions to some questions. And what you'll hear is some good news and some very responsive changes that should make the downtown community pleased. So go right ahead. You got the ball.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Don Lucier, here to talk about item 6, or as I like to call it, the main event. In the control room, if we could bring up the monitors, please.
A little soft shoe.
So how you been? There we go. Okay, great. Thank you. I did prepare a presentation for tonight just so it would be a little easier to talk about some of the numbers. So, bottom line, we did get, about 2 weeks ago, we got an updated cost estimate from Stantec based on the final design. And, you know, it was much anticipated. Unfortunately, and I obviously, I don't think anyone's surprised to find out that costs go up, but it was quite a bit more of an increase than I was certainly expecting. So the first question I wanted to address is, like, what caused this enormous cost increase, and it is a big number. So I've taken a stab at breaking it down by sort of categories of work. And I'll say that, you know, it's going to be difficult to try to follow the numbers from one chart to the other because they're slicing and dicing the numbers different ways. But if you have any questions, please interrupt me. So the first thing is, you know, looking at categories of work, demo and excavation. This is sort of like the, you know, setting the stage. Original estimate based on the preliminary design was about $500,000. The final design came in at $1 million. The biggest single item of that was a change in one of the assumptions that we made. Very typical for this sort of infrastructure project to abandon pipes in place. Essentially, if it's not in your way, it's not in the trench, you just leave it there, you plug both ends and just let it go. I don't recommend that approach for the downtown, where, you know, eventually those old clay pipes, those old metal water mains, eventually they're going to rust through, they're going to break, and then soil gets into the pipe and causes settlement, causes uneven surface, causes sinkholes, that sort of thing. It's not that huge of a deal when it's on a side street somewhere, but in the main downtown core, it would cause a lot of disruption for some future public works director, and I didn't feel good about leaving that to my predecessor, whoever comes after me. So that change in and of itself was about $250,000. The cost of digging up the pipes and removing them fully rather than just plugging them and burying them added $250,000. The biggest single line item in here is the drainage. So there was a little bit of a increase in the scope, some additional linear feet of pipe than the original estimate. But to be quite candid, the original cost estimate used really underestimated numbers for unit prices. We updated the pricing per linear foot of piping and structures based on the most recent DOT and Island Street, as an example, cost estimates that we're seeing on bids. And in some cases, those estimated prices doubled. So unfortunately, I think we kind of missed the ball on the cost for that work. Drinking water was one of the few bright spots. We're actually right on target there. Sewer, similarly, is very close to the original budget. Curb and sidewalk did go up substantially, about $300,000, and that includes, all of the concrete surfaces, so plazas and whatnot. Half of that cost, about $163,000, was due to the fact that the original preliminary cost estimate didn't include stamped crosswalks. So some of you I know were around when Court was doing his trials of different types of crosswalk treatments for the downtown. You may recall we had some that were like hexagon patterns, and we had the stamped pavement. We had inlaid bricks for the Central Square. Over the years, we've kind of settled out that the stamped asphalt is the best option for making the downtown crosswalks a little special, so to speak. The inlaid pavers really had some longevity issues, and they were hard to maintain. They would end up getting knocked out by the plows, and then we'd have to have like a little patch of asphalt in the middle of the pavers. They didn't look great. Those hexagon pattern inlays were really impossible to maintain, so eventually we just started painting over them. That didn't look good. The inlaid or the stamped asphalt that we're using now, that red brick pattern, it's asphalt surface, but we put a thermoplastic onto it, heat it up, and then press a form into it to give it that brick pattern. What's really nice about that is it's easy to repair. We can just repair the wheel ruts that develop over time. And we're getting good longevity out of that. So 3 or 4 years, they still look pretty good. And when they start to look a little threadbare, we can fix them pretty easily. So that wasn't included in the preliminary cost estimate, but it accounts for about half of the cost for the curbing and sidewalk escalation. On, let's see, the next one, lighting and electrical was another big miss. Most of this increase in cost is associated with the electrical more than the lighting. The lighting, their original estimate was pretty much spot on. The cost of replacing all of the electrical system downtown, so the conduit and the wires that run between the lights, the pedestals where we allow event organizers to plug in and whatnot, that was about $500,000 of extra funds that just weren't included in the preliminary cost estimate. And I was really shocked at the size of the wiring needed to supply that power. There's something like 7,000 feet of copper wire that's a ½ inch in diameter. So really heavy duty cable because of the lengths and the voltages required. So that was a big cost. Landscaping and furnishing went up, about 10%. I think that's basically just cost escalation. The other big one here is general conditions, allowances, and contingencies. So this is kind of a catch-all category. It includes things like, the cost of the contractor to move all of his equipment to the site, the cost of the contractor to have a foreman on site overseeing the work. It also includes things like allowances that we write into the contract that are spent only with city permission. So, for example, we have in there, look it up just real quick so I don't lie to you. right now, we're carrying a asphalt escalation, meaning if the price of asphalt changes through the duration of the contract, we adjust the price of bituminous pavement accordingly. And it's a well-established formula that's set by DOT. We use the It's the Federal Energy Commission, basically, that monitors fuel prices around the nation. We use their indices to make that adjustment. Basically, it allows the contractor to know that if his costs go up through the duration of the contract, he's got some protection. And it works both ways. If the cost of asphalt goes down during the course of the contract, we get a credit for it as well. So it works both ways. We're also carrying $250,000 in a contingency allowance for contaminated soil and groundwater. With any luck, we won't spend $1 of that. But if we do run into a situation like we know in the vicinity of Emerald Street and Main Street intersections, there was a gas station there. We know that they had leaks. We could run into soil when we're replacing pipes that is contaminated, has to be managed appropriately, put into containers, tested, and disposed of properly. So we have an allowance that would allow us to pay for that without stopping the contract while we come back and get a change order, that sort of thing. So, that money increased, but it's there as an insurance policy more than anything else. So those are kind of the big items and how they broke down by different categories of work. So what does all that mean? As it's currently approved, the project that you've approved, the scope that we all agreed to, right now in the general fund is short about $5.5 million, maybe a little bit more than that. The sewer fund is short about $400,000. That's a lot of money, obviously, and I don't feel great about it. So we worked with the city manager and came up with some suggestions for cost reduction measures. The first one here, and the biggest one, is going to be to eliminate Gilboa Ave and Church Street from the scope of the project. It's a big change. It would save us about $2.3 million. We would basically just turn the corner on both of those streets, 20, 30 feet from the main street, and stop the utility work there. That work will eventually have to be done in the future, but I think that it wouldn't affect the downtown merchants if it came back in 5 or 6 or 10 years to do that work. And the reality is that it's not as urgent as the Main Street work itself. So I think we can safely postpone that scope into a future project, and it wouldn't have any adverse effect on the downtown community, the neighborhood, and it would be a relatively low risk. And in Gilboa Ave specifically, that work is really preparing Gilboa Ave for anticipated development. So right now, if some massive housing development were to be proposed on one of the parcels down there, we really don't have a way of providing fire protection, water, sewer capacity, drainage capacity with the existing infrastructure. This project was intended to try to set that up for the future so we can continue past St. James down to School Street and provide the utility infrastructure that's going to be needed at some point in the future. Like I said, I do believe that work will need to be done, but it's not as urgent as the work on Main Street and Central Square itself. The second one there is reusing the existing LED fixtures, and luckily it's dark enough now, so hopefully maybe you can see some of them outside the windows. We've always talked about reusing the existing lamp poles. We are going to be adding more lights with the new project, and we can still get the same style, so they'll all match the existing light poles. There's a few that are different style that we're not going to reuse, but most of the lamp poles downtown we had planned on using. We weren't planning on using the actual lighting fixtures, the glass that sits on top of the light pole. Those are older style fixtures. They don't meet current standards for dark sky, and they produce a little more glare. So we had planned on changing them out. Talking to Stantec, I think we could safely plan on using about half of them, or probably in good enough condition to reuse. That would save us about $250,000 initially. Eventually, those fixtures will reach the end of their useful life and they'll need to be replaced, but I think we can drag that out a little bit into the future. And then finally, the one that the chair alluded to, the one that will probably make me a little less unpopular tonight, is the idea of trying to crash this project from 3 construction seasons into 2. Now, before we get too excited about that, that comes with a caveat. And the caveat is we're going to have to change the rules of the game that we've been talking about for the last 3 or 4 years. What we've said right along is we're going to put restrictions into the contractor's contract so that he's only allowed to take, for example, 25 parking spaces out of service at one time while the rest of the downtown parking all remain in place. If we wanted to make this doable for a contractor to finish in 2 construction seasons, we're basically going to have to give him more latitude to disrupt more of the downtown at any one time. And if we're willing to live with that condition, that more of the parking will be torn up, more of the streets will be under construction, and more of the roadway will be under construction at any one time, they can have a couple of different crews working on different parts of the project area and do it in 2 seasons. And I think there are contractors within our geography that do have the capability of doing that. I know at least one downtown merchant has asked, can we do it in 1 season? And I absolutely do not think we have anybody in our neighborhood that has the equipment and staffing needed to try to do this all in 1 season. If we were out on the seacoast, we might have more luck getting a contractor that big, but we don't have any contractors that scale around here. So those are our suggestions for cost reduction. The other thing we looked at is there any more money that we can find if we shake the couch cushions? So 2 suggestions in this department. Right now, in FY26, Ashbrook Road signals were scheduled for replacement. Talking to my staff and the folks that have been taking care of these signals for years, we think we can safely push that off. That one's relatively new compared to most of our signal equipment, and it can wait a little bit longer. So we are suggesting that's $225,000 of cash that could be put into the downtown project. And then finally, the other one that you could think about is the Court Street culvert replacement. This is a stone culvert that passes under Court Street up near the hospital. It's scheduled for replacement in '27 at the cost of nearly $1 million. This one, I think we can postpone it, but you will see it, scheduled in the CIP that's coming up when we talk about the CIP in 5 or 6 months. It can't be put off forever, but I think we can postpone it. That was planned for debt funding, so it would offset some of the additional debt funding that we would need to make this project happen. So, if you were to take all of our suggestions, scope reduction, project delays, and diverting those funds into this project, essentially what that leaves you with is a shortfall of about $2.7 million, $2.8 million, all of which would be in the general fund. And I guess I would say, let me, Elizabeth, would you like to talk about that number first, or would you like me to talk about the things that we're not suggesting?
I think both were.
Okay. So there's a number of cost-saving measures that we did consider, thought about, and we're not recommending tonight. So I'd like to take a moment to go through them because I'm sure you've probably heard some of these. One is to remove the spare conduit and pull boxes from the project scope. So We had considered and planned, as you know, the city council adopted a dig once policy many years ago. We try to think about what else needs to be done. We had planned on putting 2 empty conduits with pull boxes, basically just a little structure where you can open it up and get access to those conduits. Those would be intended for future use, some unknown use, fiber optics, telecommunication, that sort of thing. But they wouldn't be used immediately. To ring the project with those 2 conduits and pull boxes, just the materials alone, is $135,000. That said, it is contradictory to your dig once policy. So my suggestion there is to have us bid that as an alternate, and then we can evaluate when we get the bids in whether we think it makes sense to move forward with that option. The next one is temporary pavement. So right now in the bid estimate, it includes the cost to temporarily pave areas that have been dug up but aren't going to be touched in a little while. That would save about, if we eliminated that temporary pavement entirely, we could save about $280,000. We're not recommending it because we think that we're going to want the ability to say, all right, well, if this area is generating a lot of dust, it's causing a lot of problems for the merchants on this part of the project, we need to put down temporary pavement for this next 2 months until we finish the project. I think just having that amount of money in there, and staff can try to minimize it, control it as much as possible, but having it in there will give us a little more flexibility to respond to concerns and complaints that we might get. The next one, eliminating the imprinted crosswalks. I've already addressed it somewhat. I do think it would save $163,000. That said, having those sort of special crosswalk treatments versus just painted crosswalks like we see everywhere else in town is part of what makes the downtown look and feel special and different. I would really hate to see that go away. I think it's part of that downtown aesthetic. And like I said, they've actually served us really well. We get good lifespan out of them, and when we do need to repair them, sort of just clean them up a little bit, we can do just a portion that's worn versus doing the entire treatment. So I don't recommend removing that. I hope that you'll keep it. Next is minimizing the use of colored and textured concrete. Now, I say minimize here because we are going to need some textured or colored concrete in order to provide buffers. So the buffer between the parking stall and the bike lane, the buffer between the bike lane and the regular sidewalk, those areas will need to be differentiated. So we can't eliminate that cost entirely, but we could minimize it. And where we would be eliminating it is places like Railroad Square. Again, I think that those sort of aesthetic treatments are part of what make downtown special. And I would really hate to see us spend a whole lot of money and end up with a project that nobody really feels great about, nobody loves and thinks is ugly. I do think that would be a loss in terms of just the aesthetics and the project, finished product, if you will. Temporary lighting. So the contract includes about $100,000 to provide temporary lighting. So as you can imagine, once all of the existing light poles are removed, we're digging up the downtown, there's going to be periods of time where there's no installed lighting. The contract includes the cost for the contractor to rent and install temporary lights for basically public safety and making sure that people can get around downtown safely. I think that's pretty important from the public safety perspective, and I don't recommend removing that. But it is something we talked about. Finally, because I know it's going to come up, well, what if we just eliminated the bike lanes? So there are 1,700 square yards of colored concrete on the bike lanes. If we were just to make them plain concrete, that would save you about $68,000. And for that fairly modest savings, you would be basically violating your complete streets policy and your policies that have consistently been throughout the years saying we want to make it's a bicycle-friendly, bicycle-inviting community. So don't recommend that. This one I think it might get a little more attention, tree wells. So we've talked about including what we call silva cells. Basically, they're structures that are under the sidewalk that prevent the soils from getting compacted and provide tree roots with more volume of air and water to be able to absorb stormwater and then also to have healthy root systems for these trees. They are not cheap, and I think I've said that in the past. They're expensive systems, granted, but ultimately they are going to result in trees that are healthier and have longer lives. So I do think that they're worth it. I also think that it's an important part of reducing the amount of stormwater runoff that's just reaching the surface water. And I think you've all heard me get on my soapbox and talk about how we just can't keep building bigger pipes to manage stormwater. Eventually, the solution has to include these green options that are absorbing more water, holding it on the landform, and allowing the natural processes like evapotranspiration to suck up that water and release it to the atmosphere. So I think it's an investment that's worthwhile, but it would be a savings of about $379,000. And then finally, the one that I know I've heard is, well, why aren't we just digging a trench, replacing the pipe, and putting it back exactly the way it is? And I will say two arguments against that approach. First, it's likely to be more expensive, not less. I'll explain that. And the second is, I guarantee you nobody will be happy with the finished product if that were the approach we take. And why do I say that? So this is a graphic from the preliminary, actually the conceptual design stage early on in the project, and I didn't have it's updated, so some of these pipes might have shifted and whatnot, but the premise is, and what I'm trying to explain is sound. The blue lines here show the trench that's surrounding new water mains. The green lines are showing the trench surrounding new sewer lines. And the orange tan color is showing the trench around the drain pipes. So once you dig up a trench for water, sewer, drain, not shown here is the gas lines that are also going to be replaced. The new electrical systems are very fine lines on there. You probably can't see them at that scale. New electrical irrigation lines. Once you dig all of that up, the amount of pavement and concrete sidewalk that's actually left untouched is probably somewhere in the order of 50%. Now, if we were to spend $20 million and I gave you a downtown with a trench across Main Street every 50 feet or 30 feet and a trench across the sidewalk every 25 feet, I guarantee you nobody is going to be happy with that product. And why do I say it might actually cost more? So when we bid projects like this for infrastructure projects, oh, sorry, Mike. I'm on the volunteer fire department in my town, and the notices come through my phone. Sorry about that. When we bid projects like this, we pay one price for machine method asphalt. So if we're paving a road, they come in with their big paver machine, they back the truck up, and they put down hundreds of tons in a day, so as much as 1,000 tons in a day. When we're paying for the repair of a single trench like this, we pay a different cost because they can't use that same big machine that puts out thousands of tons a day. They are, in a lot of cases, literally dumping it and laborers with rakes are smoothing it out and raking it out and compacting it. That's called hand method. It's a much more expensive unit price for that type of work. So when you add that more expensive method of doing the work with the fact that it's just a terrible idea, I hope that there isn't a temptation to go that route. And I know that that's something that you probably have heard. I know I've heard it. But for those reasons, it really is not recommended. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to the manager to talk about how we can bridge the gap.
Thank you. So this afternoon, we spent a lot of time looking at the capital plan and the operational budget. And one of the things that we were able to identify, and maybe the timing for the parking garage study was well-timed today, but in our CIP, in our capital plan, we have a downtown infrastructure capital reserve. It's funded by a TIF district in the downtown, and we have been setting aside money in that capital reserve for a number of years. And we are planning to pull money out of that reserve to fund this project. But starting in fiscal '27, which is when we would begin to start to pay a bond on this for this general fund difference that we're talking about today, we actually have the funds available in that capital reserve to pay the bond and the interest payment. Originally, we were planning to set that aside for a future parking garage, and we would be able to use that. And I think why that's important, we looked at, already in this project, we have planned debt funding, either in stormwater resiliency portions of the project or other parts of the project. But today we focused specifically on the difference, the $3 million difference, and how to bridge that gap. And we can confidently do that with the Downtown Infrastructure Capital Reserve account to fund the interest and principal payments for this difference, this $3 million difference.
That's it.
Yeah, it's not, and I would also add that that's a simple answer, but the other thing that's really important to talk about is we're now beginning our capital planning process. Over the next several months, you will be looking at all projects in the city for the next 7 years and beyond. And at that time, we go through an extensive process to update costs and look at whether or not priorities have shifted. So you will then also have an opportunity to look at the bottom line impacts of projects on the budget. And while tonight Don has mentioned a couple possibilities of projects to push out, that conversation will be ongoing until you finalize a capital plan in probably 5-6 months from now.
Thank you. I have a question, Don. In our previous conversation, you and I, about the eliminating the temporary pavement and going straight to a base course.
Yep.
I thought that sounded like a good idea to me.
Yeah, and like I said, we can minimize the use of that temporary pavement. My only hesitation is eliminating it from the contract entirely will reduce our ability to respond to customer complaints. So I would prefer to have that in the contract when we put it out to bid, and tell Brian and his team, don't use it unless we need to. But if we remove it entirely, then it's a tool that we're kind of giving up from our tool bag, and really it comes down to trying to make it tolerable for the businesses.
Okay. And also one little observation that came to me. The construction project really isn't 2 years. It's 2 6-month periods.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
maybe it's just a little different way to market it in a sense. But anyway, yeah. Councilman.
Okay, a couple of things. I had a million questions. I keep crossing them out because we'll be here another 2 hours. I guess from what I've seen, going back, and I know Mitch and I have been both working on this for 3 years now. It's crazy.
It's more than that.
It's more than that, but I mean, we've been actively on this for
We
three,
all
probably
have.
going on 4 years. I don't know. Time goes by fast when you're having fun. I believe this is meeting number 71 for the downtown project, if I'm correct. Number 71, which, as Councilor Greenwald mentioned, I am very disappointed about the lack of attendees here tonight. This is meeting number 71, probably the most important meeting because we're almost there. So those that didn't show up, and the keyboard warriors, keyboard worrying me is like, my question to you is, where the hell were you tonight? So there you are. Question for you, and you kind of went over it a little bit, but this is the question that, in the comment that you hear all the time, is like, just do the pipes and nothing else. Just so, and I'm just repeating it again because I want people to hear this. This envision of going down Main Street with a backhoe, taking up a pipe, putting down a pipe, and paving back over it. That's the mentality a lot of people have. Right. What they don't realize is, and you said it, and I'm just repeating it, that's not the major problem. The problem is all the pipes coming out of the buildings, which different age buildings, different age pipes, different size pipes, all the way from the beginning of Main Street to the end of Main Street that connect into the pipes. That's where your problem is. So when people think leave the sidewalk alone, the sidewalks have to come up to get under it, because that's probably the most important part. It's where the pipes are coming out of the buildings and they're going to connect into the new line. Right. So I'm just repeating what you said, but I want people to understand that this is not a case of just digging up some pipes with a backhoe and putting them down again. I only mentioned 3 years. I know it's been longer than that, but it's like at some point, somebody has to realize that out there, that this is more than just a backhoe going down Main Street. And of course, I'm sure tomorrow my phone will blow off the hook again, and they'll say just replace the pipes and nothing else. But the big thing is, and basically that's what we are doing. The point is, the east-west pipes coming out of the building, connecting into the line, are the biggest reason that everything has to get torn up. And I'm just preaching to the choir, and I'm glad you brought it up, and I just wanted to repeat what you said. So I'm not even asking a question, I'm just making a statement again on what you said. And over to the city manager, basically what we're saying is, even though this is a complicated funding project, and it is, and I applaud you for the time you put into this also, because it has to get done. If I thought these pipes could go another 3 years, I'd be the first one to say, hold off on the project, and maybe get a new administration in Washington that has a clue. But with that said, we've seen throughout Keene that that's not the case anymore. That the risk that we're taking by delaying is just not there anymore. Every week you'll see a water pipe bursting in Keene, and I think these are the oldest downtown. And to whoever built these pipes, I think we need to send a kudos out to the company if they're still in business. I don't know if they're still in business since they've probably been there since the 1800s, but my next comment, statement, question is to the city manager is, so basically what you're saying is, with the funding mechanisms we have in place, with the bonds that are maturing, and then we'll obviously have another bond go out, basically the net tax increase for the average citizen of Keene will be negligible or flat. Am I correct in that statement?
So we are talking about the increase in cost that we're talking about today, which is the additional approximately $3 million of general fund borrowing. Mm-hmm. And I've identified the capital reserve account to pay for the principal and interest payment for that additional $3 million, therefore negating any additional impacts from the project. The project has been funded over a number of years,
Mm-hmm.
so I don't want to say the project isn't impacting our taxes, because it's been funded in capital reserve, it's being funded in a number of ways in the water and sewer department. But we focused on this increase, and we have a way to fund it using that downtown infrastructure capital.
And I do have one question. I know Senator Shaheen has come up with a grant of about $2.8 million, if I'm correct. Is that in the project right now?
No. So we didn't include that because we don't have it, but we have made it through the first round. So we worked, Public Works put together a very competitive application to Senator Shaheen's office for a congressionally directed funding request for about $2.8 million. It is focused on the sidewalk, bike lanes, expansion of the sidewalk space, green space, and things of that nature. And that would offset the general fund portion that we're talking about tonight if we were successful. A good portion of it, not all of it, but most.
Okay. Thank you both. Thank you.
Yes, Council.
Thank you,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate Councilor DeFilio's comments about, the project having to move forward, and I know there will be an attempt to do this. I'm not interested in relitigating the merits of this project. This has to happen, and I'll just leave it at that. We've spent plenty of time doing that as a council and as a community. I do have much like Councilor Filio, kind of a laundry list of questions, some of which I'll kind of address offline with staff. One of the questions that I want to ask is around this, some more specifics around what loosening the work restrictions looks like. We're eliminating streets from the scope of the project, which in my mind should contribute to the ability to get this done on a shorter cycle anyway. But one of the commitments that we've made to downtown residents, to downtown, consumers, and to downtown merchants is that business is going to be open. We're going to really limit the number of parking spaces that are being taken up, limit the number of storefronts that are being impacted at any one time. And, so long as we're trying to maintain the integrity of the project through this process, I think we also need to maintain the integrity of our commitments to the community around what this disruption is actually going to look like. So I'm a little bit uncomfortable without some more specifics around what we have in mind for loosening work restrictions.
Yeah, so the big ones are going to be parking and the amount of roadway being disturbed at any one time. The sort of the rules of the game that we've talked about with business meetings and what have you is, and I'll use Central Square as an example because it's easy to visualize. If the contractor is working on this section here in front of City Hall, then the section in front of the stage and in front of the poorhouse would have to remain open for people to park and access those businesses. When he moves over to the stage, then he's going to have to make this section in front of City Hall available. When they are doing in terms of traffic, when they're working here, they wouldn't also be working down Main Street in front of those businesses. So they would basically be working in one section at a time and hopscotching around. My idea is, in order to make this something that can be done within 1 or 2 seasons, they would basically have to have 2 separate crews working at 2 separate locations. So we'd be doubling the amount of parking that would be out of service at any one time. So it might be the east side of Central Square here in front of City Hall and the section of Main Street from Roxbury to Church Street. All of that would be under construction at one time. Those parking spaces, all of those parking spaces would be eliminated while 2 separate crews are doing separate jobs on those areas. And then they would move on to a different location.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I would ask downtown merchants how they felt about that, but I don't think I'm going to have that opportunity looking out at the crowd. Another question that I have is kind of trying to wrap my head around there were misses on the estimates, and I'm trying to get a sense of, is that a Stantec estimate miss? Is it a City of Keene miss? Kind of how are we arriving at this point where, and I appreciate and have full faith and confidence in the city manager that, we're going to be able to, because of the years of planning, financially, we're going to be able to, fund this in a way that makes sense and avoids a kind of spike in the tax rate that I know my constituents are concerned about, or our constituents are concerned about. But, how do we get to this point in terms of such significant misses?
Yeah, like I said, it wasn't just one big item. There were some large items, obviously, but it was really a number of different factors, as I kind of laid out at the beginning. And in terms of, assigning responsibility, I don't want to sit here and say that Stantec dropped the ball, because honestly, I do think that they did a great job on this project. The reality is that when you're going through iterative design processes, there's always things that come up that change and weren't foreseen originally. And I could just as well point at myself and say, hey, I had no idea that it was going to be, almost $500,000 worth of electrical wires that we would have to replace. That didn't even occur to me. I'm a little hesitant to just throw somebody under the bus.
Okay, that's fair, and I appreciate that. I mean, I think that we all need to have realistic expectations around a project of this magnitude and scope. So I'll leave that. The final question that I have is that in the memo included in the agenda packet, there is reference to eliminating bid alternates or optional items that the council has previously voted to include as bid alternates. And I didn't hear that talked about in the presentation at all. I understand it's not necessarily a cost savings because it's going in as an alternate. We haven't factored it in. I think the changes that are proposed largely preserve the integrity of the design approved by council throughout the various processes and stages of the process, excuse me. I do have some questions about kind of the integrity of the council process to be going in as a committee and recommending pulling things out that we've already litigated in front of the full council this year. I believe it was the first January meeting. And so I wonder if you could speak a little bit more to that portion of the recommendation.
So actually, the city attorney caught this notion earlier and pointed it out to me. I think she was the one who originally realized it. That, depending on the council's view of this question, this could theoretically be considered a sort of a reconsideration of a decision that the council's already made. So I'll let Amanda jump in, but I think the council is allowed to sort of waive that was that fair?
Yes, please.
So, I want to give credit to Councilor Favelis for bringing this up. I didn't come up with that concept myself, but appreciate bringing it up. The concept that would apply to reconsidering a topic or a vote that has already been done by the council lives in your rules under section 33. It's not that's strictly a reconsideration. It's when a matter is in front of you that is an identical subject matter to what you've already considered. What that means on a play-by-play when you see something is really up to the council. They've created this rule. They get to use this rule. If something's in front of you that you don't think is the same thing, you don't have to have the rule apply. When you do have something that you see to be identical with something you've already done that year, the rule would prevent you considering it again. We do have the ability for the council to suspend that rule if they do want to address that identical subject matter, vote on it a different way, vote on it again, whatever their prerogative is.
Is that within a year or?
That is the calendar year, that's right.
Okay. So, to phrase it another way, we could not just suddenly say, no project.
Right, correct.
Okay. All right, good. Yes, Laura.
Thank you. I guess I was just sitting here. We always knew that delaying was likely going to increase the cost. We hoped that we would get additional funding to cover that, and some of it we hope we still will get. But I'm really impressed with the way that staff has pivoted over the years in delaying it and also in kind of coming up with alternative plans in finding out that the costs had increased. I hear parking as a concern and that, kind of that having to work in larger areas. We just had a presentation that said at the peak parking times there are 100 and I think it was 3 or 105 open spots. So I think that sort of alleviates that concern for me. I could also take the approach that people are concerned about money right now and things are especially expensive, but honestly, as I think about it, a lot of those are because budgets have been cut. That is sort of the extra cost, that there's not as much assistance. So I would hate to see, sort of a Band-Aid approach where it means that people are having trouble accessing businesses or in the long run when the project is completed, or that it's not a place where people want to come. So I know some of this is not ideal and what we had hoped for, but I feel good about the way this looks and the recommendations that
Thank you.
you put forward.
Yes.
All right, I did write a whole bunch of comments, but my colleagues here said a lot of them, so I won't repeat it. But just for the record and for folks at home, I just want to be really, really clear that both the committee, this committee, and our full council has always been crystal clear that we may need to pivot as we got closer to the, groundbreaking, especially when it came to the aesthetic designs. However, even back in January, when the council agreed to postpone it, we did so, and a lot of councilors were concerned that that delay was done specifically to allow the additional prep time for businesses. But there was also a concern that that delay was going to then be used as some type of tactic to change the overall site plan. So I'm glad to see that the city's recommendations are more leaning to the aesthetic side. I just want to keep that really, really clear, that that was kind of the agreement that council had when we voted in January. And just like, as we planned, we went really pie in the sky, big, knowing that we might have to scale back. And that's what you do when you're planning. I'm not concerned about that. And I thank the city manager for explaining and pointing out how that we can make these changes without increasing the tax burden to taxpayers. I do have one question, though. I know the downtown businesses representation isn't here right now, but I really am concerned, and I want their input on the change of seasons and what they feel. And we do have an ombudsman, so my hope is that they have gone out and had this conversation with some of the business owners and may be able to speak to that. I'd be curious. I'm thinking, of course, it sounds like a good thing, shorten the project, but I'd feel better hearing from business owners on that.
Mr. Chair, if I may?
Yep.
That is a wonderful segue, Councilor. I appreciate it. I was so eager to get to the good stuff and rip off the Band-Aid tonight that I jumped in. But I do want to take a moment to introduce you all formally to our new project ombudsman for the downtown project. George, been waiting patiently. George Downing has started. He started with the city June 10th. Is that right? Does that sound about right? So he has been with the city now for almost 2 months. Spent a little time sort of catching up with all of the work that you've been doing for the past 5+ years in terms of how we got to this point, how the project evolved. But he's also gotten a chance to get out and meet a lot of the merchants, so he's really already sort of steeping himself in it. George?
Thank you, Don. Mr. Chair, as Don said, I'm George Downing. I am the full title is Downtown Infrastructure Project Ombudsman, which is a mouthful, and I usually just introduce myself as the Ombudsman. I have walked downtown a couple times, just intentionally to start trying to meet people. I have not had the conversations that Councilor Workman asked about because the 2-season proposal was still being worked through by staff, and I didn't feel that it was appropriate for me to start proposing that. Some merchants have, as Don alluded to, actually asked, can we do this sooner? Most of them that have said that want it in 1 season, and he did speak to the difficulties to that. So there is appetite for that. Once I hear what council is leaning towards, what this committee is leaning towards, I do want to start talking one-on-one and find out how the two-season trade-off versus the more aggressive phasing will impact them. I know from those that I've talked to, they've said the faster you can get this done, the better. So I'm hoping that that's where it lands, because I suspect that that's where you will also land. That's the largest share of the savings that you can see from these proposals. But I don't want to take up too much of what's already been a really long meeting. I will reach out to this committee specifically. I'll be reporting to you guys monthly on what I'm hearing from the merchants, what issues. I'm not going to. Most of what I will be dealing with will be communications perspective, bringing information to folks as to what the scheduling looks like, what changes specifically are happening on any given street at any given time, and connecting people with the people in the city, with the construction people directly that can help them with difficulties that they're facing. Hopefully, I won't personally have to bring stuff to this council. If it does have to come to you, it will come through Mr. Lucier. But you're welcome to reach out to me. My contact information is on the downtown project page, and I will be reaching out to the chairman directly to ask what he wants to hear from me on a monthly basis.
Thank you. Yep. Thank you. Yes.
I think they have questions for you.
I just have a procedural question. If we were to put this on more time till we have the answers, are we up against a time frame right now that we have to make a decision tonight, or can we get some more information?
No, I don't think there's a critical urgency tonight. We are planning to advertise that's like mid to late September. So, that might get delayed a week or two. But I don't think it's a critical urgency at this point.
Jacob.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and George, good to see you again. I think last time that we were in a room together was at the MoCo Lights Camera Keen, and you looked a little bit more like Henry VIII than you do tonight. The character that he was playing, and the folks that didn't attend or watch. But I do have a kind of general comment or question, I guess, for the committee, because this will be my motion. I'm not inclined to put this on more time. I have the same concern that Councilor Workman has about not having kind of heard from the downtown merchants. My thinking is that we've got a week before council, and if we needed to make a change to this on the council floor based on feedback that we receive within the next week, then I think that would be preferable to kind of pushing this out further. My question to the committee is, do we want to address the eliminating things we've previously asked to be placed in as a bid alternate here, or do we want to let that process move forward and have FOP make a decision when the contract comes back, and maybe avoid some of the having to suspend the rules, because that would be my preference, but I feel at the direction of the committee here wanting to move this motion
Your preference is to move along this and let FOP deal with changes to this?
To let FOP deal with
Subtract.
what the bid alternates come back as when they're working out what the contract we're agreeing to is.
Works for me. Anybody? Say yes. Yeah, okay.
I just think that's a simpler motion. So
Anyone else want to speak on any part of this project or issue or questions? Or yes, sir.
Past my bedtime, so you're going to have to bear with me a little bit here. So, Jacob, thank you. You asked a question regarding the original estimates to where we are now. And regardless of who you throw under the bus, that's not acceptable. And the fact of the matter is, Don, is one question I have for you is when you're going through the slides, the last slide, which had $1 million, it was contract management. It was $1 million, and there was no pre-estimate at all, and it was $1 million, and you didn't talk about that, and that's $1 million. So what was that all about?
Through the
That's it for me.
Yeah, I know. Speak to me to speak to him. Yes.
Yeah, so on this slide here, construction administration is the cost of having an inspector in the field a project manager that's going to be attending meetings and whatnot. It's very typical, for this type of project right now, for example, MSFI, no. It's been a long night. FOP recently approved contracts with GPI to do the sort of services for the George Street Bridge project and the Transportation Heritage Trail. That's what that construction administration fee is. That was not included in the original preliminary design estimate. It just wasn't a line item on that estimate, but it is a cost that we are going to have to pay.
Probably should have been.
Probably should have been.
Okay, well, yeah.
Quick question, going through all my notes, I found one of the questions that I wanted to ask here. Earlier, when we were talking about possibly delaying things, one of the problems at the time was, and one of the concerns was the unknown of the tariffs and how they were going to affect construction costs and equipment, which many of it comes from Canada. So I know a lot of contractors in this area get their materials from Canada. And I know construction companies, from what I was hearing and from a couple of construction forums that I talked to, they were bidding high just because they weren't sure of the costs of construction materials. Well, obviously, that hasn't settled. The tariff situation is probably more whacked right now than it's ever been. Are they finding, is Stantec finding, similar to last year, that construction companies are bidding high because they're not sure of what they're going to be paying for construction equipment?
So this question came up actually earlier today. The Keene Sentinel was asking me questions about the cost estimate. And what I told them, I'll tell you, it's very difficult for me to say, this portion of the cost increase is due to tariffs, this portion is due to labor shortages, this portion is due to this and that. The data set that we're using for this is the most recent DOT bid pricing that we have access to, so we can see what contractors are bidding on a ton of asphalt and a cubic yard of gravel in place, that sort of thing, and our own pricing for those projects. We can't look into, to why the contractor is choosing to bid that particular item a certain way. So it's really hard for me to know why those prices are going up. I can only tell you that these are the prices that we're seeing for bid items now versus what we saw for bid items last construction season.
And as you said, or saying this, it just struck me, this is an estimate. We don't have any bids yet.
Right.
That's right.
Oh, man. That's something to worry. Maybe it'll go down, yeah.
Mr. Chair, I'm an eternal optimist, so I will say that engineering firms have an incentive to not be the low bidder. In other words, their incentive structure is such that it's much better for them to tell us it's going to cost $23 million and have it cost 21 versus the opposite.
Sure.
So I'm optimistic that this is a conservative estimate and that we'll be pleasantly surprised when we get bids in a few months.
And when do you send out for bids? When is this?
September 15th is our target date.
Okay, we're close. Good. So anything further? Yes, sir. You've waited a long time.
Yeah, thank you. I'll be brief. Andy Holt, Forest Street. So real quick, I think please proceed with this project. In general, I think that please proceed with the project. I think what's been proposed as far as the changes makes a lot of sense. I agree that you should not change any of the non-proposed items. I think bike lanes in particular, I'd love to just stop talking about trying to remove that. I did the math and it was less than 1/3 of 1% of the cost, so very, very small. I think as Councilors Tobin and Workman touched on and Don explained, it's important to keep the above ground elements, the improvements for the crosswalks and stuff. I think that's really critical for everyone being satisfied when this is all over. And I just had one question, which was if we can know how much of the cost increase could be attributed to the decision to delay by a year. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Chair, that might actually be possible to answer, although I don't have the answer available tonight. We would have to look at the unit costs a year ago versus now and just try to break that portion of it out. It's something I can report back to you on next month if that's something you're interested in.
Well, be interesting. Thank you. Anything further? Yeah, I want to stay all night.
I think it's relatively early yet, so we can talk a little bit. Ed Haas, 114 Jordan. This may be a question for our new DIPO, our Downtown Infrastructure Project Ombudsman.
DIPO.
That's pretty classic.
That's awesome.
There was a communication to building owners downtown for interior changes that they may have, that there could be a group buying opportunity to purchase things like water meters or connections or possibly even electrical services that need to be replaced. Has there been any response from building owners downtown on that matter?
Mr. Chair, if I could ask for a clarification from the counselor. Is he referring to the communication that came from Public Works to the building owners?
I guess.
Perhaps.
Okay. So just to clarify, that didn't address things like internal improvements, electrical service, and whatnot. It addressed three different areas. One was the section of the water and sewer utility that the property owner is responsible for. What we said was if they would like to, we're going to replace up to the building face as part of the project, like we do with all of our big infrastructure projects. If they would like to have a plumber replace from the building face into their basement, up to the meter, that we would work with them. We would give them a quote for that additional work, and then when they could reimburse the city for those additional costs. The other piece of it was coordination for storm drains. So it is illegal to have your roof drains, if you have a flat roof, it is illegal to have those roof drains plumbed into the sewer system. They have to be plumbed into a different, the storm drainage system. That said, we don't have a real inventory of who might be connected to the sewer and who isn't. So what we said was if you have intentions of reconfiguring your roof drains, we would love to work with you to make sure that the connection that we're going to install and the clean out that we install is in the most optimum place for you to connect up to. And then the third thing was with ADA access into buildings. So there are buildings downtown that don't meet current accessibility guidelines. If they have the intention of doing improvements on their property to better make their entrances accessible, we would try to work with them to make sure that we're meeting the correct threshold at the sidewalk and coordinate that so they could have a better accessible facility. But that was the extent of that. And to directly answer the question, no, nobody responded to that wanting to coordinate or take advantage of that opportunity.
I think we should work on more outreach there. So, George, that's probably your department. Make sure that they're aware of that opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. And what you'll hear back is, what's going on? Okay. Anything further? Anyone?
All right. I move to recommend that the approved scope of the downtown infrastructure project be modified as follows. Eliminate work on Gilboa Avenue and Church Street. Reuse existing LED fixtures to the maximum extent feasible. Bid the spare conduit and handholds as a bid alternate item. And loosen the contractor work restrictions in order to allow construction in 2 seasons instead of 3.
Oh, there's 2 more.
That's what I want to leave to FOP.
Does have a second?
Second.
Okay, well, there's a motion and a second. And just for the benefit of anyone that's following, there were 2 other potentials that, now I understand what you were saying about eliminate the optional shade structure on Railroad Square and the big belly trash receptacles. So you want to leave that to FOP, huh?
I just think that's a cleaner motion for us to make than to be trying to suspend the rules for part of it and to be going back and taking out contract specifications. I'm not saying we do or we don't have the shade structures and the big belly when they come back. I think we've already gotten into some conversations about what the big belly estimates look like. I'm just saying that I think that's probably more, I think the motion that I made and was seconded by Councilor Tobin is probably more appropriate for right now.
City Attorney?
I just want to pipe in because I'm not sure that I have enough of the context of all the decisions that have been made by this committee. The Public Works Director likely will have better intricacies. To Councilor Favalis's intent with this, which I appreciate, I don't know if the way that motion is phrased will avoid what the council may determine is that this is a similar matter. Like I had said when I explained earlier, it is the council's prerogative to determine how Section 33 applies if what you have in front of you is substantially identical. This motion and what is being proposed will probably require the committee to analyze that. Is what you have in front of you in line with what you decided before, or does it change a decision or a vote you've done before? It's kind of a specific inquiry I encourage you to review before you vote.
I thought I understood. As I'm understanding what the motion is, if there is a desire to eliminate the shade structure and the big belly compactor, that would be done but at a FOP meeting when actual funding is being approved? Is that about right?
Yeah, I think that's what Councilor Favalis is saying. I think the reason we put it in this motion is because it's just extra work for the contractor to bid on it if we know it's not something likely to be approved. But to be truthful, when the bids come in, the FOP will be wrestling with all sorts of things to make sure that it's the bid is in line with what the budget amount is available at that time. So they will be making recommendations on other bid alternates at that time as well.
Should I expect that there will be a separate number for each of those identifiable in the bid?
Yes, Mr. Chair, if I may, my thought process, including those in the recommendation, was, as the manager alluded, I don't love to ask contractors to prepare quotes for something we know that we're not going to buy. The other thought that I had was both of those items are very easily added at a later date. So if we build Railroad Square as is, and then 5 years from now we decide we really want that shade structure, it's a simple matter to install a shade structure on top of the existing, finished surface. So I thought those were pretty easy things that we could just take off of the table. That said, if the council wants to know what those are going to cost and that is something that you desire, then we'll include it in the bid and that'll be that.
I would, because I'm sensing that you have interest in those two items remaining. What?
Sorry.
Yeah, okay.
I was just gonna say, I can imagine with some of these, there's going to be the same discussion that we had at council the last time about to include it or not, and ultimately we will likely end up on adding it as a bid alternate, because what's the harm in that? But ultimately, and I think that's what Councilor Favalis was kind of trying to avoid, which I didn't understand initially at first, but I think he was just trying to make it simplify it a little bit for council so that we weren't debating kind of unnecessarily a lot of things. So.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. And to answer the chair's question, I think that the goal of simplifying the thing was unsuccessful. The impression I'm getting. I'm not. I think I have made my opinion clear on the big belly business based on my my initial vote for the cheapest option. It's not about wanting to be married to the shade structure or wanting to be married to the trash receptacles. I think we're very obviously in a budget environment now where some of these bid alternates are going to have to get cut. I just think for me it's a process question, and how do we simplify the process and ensure that the decisions are being made at the committees that they should be made at.
Fine, yeah.
I can go either way. I would have preferred they had stayed on the recommendation to eliminate here, because remember the arguments at council, neither of these options had very strong support. It certainly didn't have majority support. It is based on just cost and, you know, we're talking tonight about, you know, eliminating things that aren't absolutely necessary. Well, those trash compactors, if I remember the price of those, there was no, I can't remember more than one council even speaking positively of them. So I think, I'll go along with this motion, but I would prefer that those two items get added to the motion because these two items have no popular vote among the council from the last vote that I remember being taken.
You want an amendment?
Well, I just want to see where the rest of the council goes. I don't want to be arguing amendments all night.
I don't either. I would, we are still appropriate discussing the motion. I would just as soon support an amendment to remove them. And
Yes.
amendment to remove or to leave it? Just testing the waters before.
I don't have a strong opinion either way. I'm fine having FOP get the amounts from FOP.
Well, if I can ask, you made the motion, it'd be up to the councilor if he wanted to amend his motion to add these two items. I'm not going to fight over these two things all night, but they have no popularity among the full council.
I'm gonna stick with the motion that I made. I don't have any interest in amending.
That's fine. Yeah, it's fine.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Anything from the public? Committee? All in favor? Done. Okay, just,
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
we have concluded the agenda, and the news is September 3rd, we are having a special MSFI meeting because there's so much material that has come forth to us. So I thank you all for coming, and thank the staff and anyone who is watching at home that's still awake. We are adjourned.